why. I don't know what's going on. Why is there stuff on the screen? Is that from last time? It must be. Wow, I didn't realize it doesn't go away. Interesting. Interesting. Good day. Welcome to Twice Baked with Lolo. I'm Lolo. And you are about to get twice baked with me. What is going on? Stop. Okay, wait, let me find the chat. What are you doing? I wonder if is this the drama? Is this the drama? Supposed to be touching that. I don't think that's supposed to be touching that. Although maybe that didn't actually do any. That didn't actually do anything. Good morning. Good morning, Oren. How are you? I don't know how to fix the chat. Hold on, I gotta fix that. What's wrong? What's wrong, everybody? Oh.
Hello, hi, everybody.
Here we go. Oh, hold on. Shit. So not ready. And it's like, I have nothing but time.
So for those that don't know me, my name is Tommy Piggott, Principal Deputy Spokesperson. Stepping in for the day for Spokesperson Bruce, who is traveling with the Secretary and the President. So to start, a few remarks up top, and then I'll be happy to take some questions. So the American people can be proud that their leaders are putting their safety and security and prosperity first. This week's developments show an administration delivering boldly on its promises, and the results speak for themselves. When President Trump says he will never leave an American behind, he means it. Idan Alexander has been released from Hamas captivity and reunited with his family in Israel. This is the result of unwavering American leadership. President Trump and Secretary Rubio are also strengthening strategic ties in the Middle East, delivering security and economic wins in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Earlier today, President Trump announced Saudi Arabia's $600 billion commitment to invest in the United States, building economic ties that will translate into jobs and opportunities for the American people and the region. Secretary Rubio will next travel to Turkey to attend the NATO Informal Foreign Ministers meeting. Since the November election, 20 NATO allies have announced increases in defense spending, a direct result of President Trump's leadership, and a renewed commitment to peace through strength. We also welcome the ceasefire between India and Pakistan and commend Prime Ministers Modi and Sharif for choosing the path of peace. As President Trump said, their decision reflects strength, wisdom, and fortitude. We urge both sides to maintain direct communication to preserve regional stability. Regarding Iran, negotiations continue to show progress. This administration remains clear. Iran will never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. As President Trump has said, Iran can have a much brighter future. The time is right now for them to choose. And finally, the president has secured another win for American
never say
workers.
Never.
An initial agreement with China to reduce China's tariffs and set a path for future discussions to open market access for American exports. As President Trump has said, the U.S. will continue to prioritize fairness, reciprocity, and results. The American people are already seeing the benefits. Inflation is down, grocery and gas prices are falling, and optimism is returning across the country.
All right, let's slow down a little bit there,
Skippy. Once again delivering on his promise to make America great again. And before I take questions, I would like to thank spokesperson Tammy Bruce and the entire team for its unwavering support. It is an honor to be here, and I look forward to answering your questions for the American people.
Is it an honor? Because, Tommy, I think you should be ashamed of yourself.
Welcome to the briefing room.
How about that?
Trump said today that he's ordering the cessation of sanctions on Syria. How quickly will the U.S. lift these sanctions? Is this something we could expect as soon as coming days?
I have nothing additional to preview. The president obviously spoke to this, and the president has been clear he wants to see prosperity for the entire region. That's part of the purpose of this trip, so nothing to further preview in terms of a timeline.
And is the U.S. pressing the UN Security Council to lift sanctions on HTS?
Again, nothing to preview on that front, but as the president said, this is about making sure we can have a region with peace and prosperity, long-term prosperity. And as Caroline Levitt said before the trip, this is about a golden age both for the American people and for the Middle East. And we're seeing that dedication with the many different announcements that the president made today.
Can you give us an update on the talks between Russia and Ukraine later this week? Will Secretary Rubio be participating in those talks? What are the expectations from the U.S. side? And there's been talk about a face-to-face meeting between Zelensky and Putin. Can you tell us anything about that or talks to prepare for those talks?
Well, the
That is
president
a
has
terrible
spoken to this
idea.
as well. He has been clear that the meeting in Istanbul is a critical opportunity for direct talks
Hell
between
no.
Russia and Ukraine.
Hell no.
That has been clear. The president has also been clear that he wants to see those talks happen, and he's been dedicated to trying to first get that ceasefire and then an enduring peace. In terms of specifics, nothing further to preview. The president also spoke to this during his speech just a short while ago. I'd refer you to his comments there. But this is a critical opportunity to, again, have those direct talks to try to achieve that ceasefire and then that long and enduring peace.
So is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Good to see you behind the podium. Very quick question. On Sunday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the ethnic cleansing of Gaza is inevitable and that they were targeting every house in Gaza for that purpose. So, in the United States, are they okay
Jane.
with that kind of language, or would there be a rebuke in the future of such a thing that
Would
is
there ever
clearly,
be a rebuke of
speaks
such
war?
language?
What is the position of the U.S.?
Well, first, I don't accept the characterization of your question. And second, I'd say that
Really?
Hamas bears sole responsibility for the war and for the
my
resumption of
God.
hostilities. We want peace and the immediate release of all
Tommy means it so much, he has to read it.
hostages. And we've also been clear from this podium and elsewhere that any departure from Gaza must be voluntary.
Yeah, but you, I mean, as far as what he said, I mean, that's what came out of the cabinet meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, independent of
He said it.
What we hear about Hamas and so on, and they are responsible for this. But do you have a position on the forcible removal of the Palestinians from Gaza?
Like I just answered that question, I stand by what I just said, and ultimately Hamas bears sole responsibility for this war. Yes.
Follow up on Gaza. The spokesperson last week, Tammy, mentioned that a foundation would be set up. At that time, it was very shortly. It was last week to distribute aid into Gaza. Where does that stand now? Is this still a project? It's still in the works. Is it going to happen? And the Israeli Prime Minister also said that in the coming days he would go in full force into Gaza. Would that disrupt those plans, or is it calculated and being prepared together?
What the fuck is going on,
Well,
Tommy?
we won't speak on behalf of the foundation, and we'll defer to the foundation in terms of any
What
announcements that they
foundation?
may or may not make. But bottom line is we welcome moves to get aid quickly into Gaza. And we also welcome creative solutions that make sure that that aid actually gets to the people that need it and is not falling into the hands of terrorists such as Hamas. So we support creative solutions to get that aid in there. We want to make sure it's done in a way where it's not
What
falling
about
into the hands of Hamas, that it's actually reaching the people that
Netanyahu's
need it.
statements?
And what
Let's
is as
pull
clear
them
as
up.
day is that the people of Gaza have suffered tremendously under Hamas. So we support those creative solutions to get aid in there, and the president has been very clear, as has Secretary Rubio. Yes.
I wanted to ask your response of reports that there were back-channel talks that led to the release of Idan Alexander, with a Hamas official reaching out to the former leader of Arab Americans for Trump. Can you speak to that report and any details about how the release came to be?
So I'm not going to comment on private diplomatic conversations, but what I will say and reiterate is that this shows that when President Trump says he will never leave an American behind, he means it. This is the direct result of American leadership, as I said earlier, and again shows the fact that President Trump is forever working for the safety and security of the American people.
Tommy gets his chance to
Secretary Rubio.
suck
But I'm
dick
not
on
gonna
air.
discuss or give details of private diplomatic conversations.
Denying it?
Again, whether or not that or did not happen, I'm not going to talk about private diplomatic conversations, whether or not they did or did not happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Tommy. Two, actually, one on Afghanistan and then a follow-up on Gaza. Yesterday, DHS Secretary
I'm glad they're not
that the
letting up.
temporary protected
Oh,
status for
damn it.
Afghanistan
Come
would
on now.
expire on May the 20th. She said the conditions in Afghanistan have improved enough for Afghans to return there. Does the State Department think that Afghanistan is now a safe destination for women and girls?
Well, look, ultimately, when it comes to the temporary protected status, I refer you to DHS. It was always meant as a temporary measure or temporary benefit. This is when that temporary benefit would expire. So for further questions on that, I refer you to DHS.
And then just to follow up on Gaza, you said you support efforts to get aid quickly into Gaza. Here we are more than 2 months later. How soon is quickly? When can we start to see food actually getting in?
Well, look, I think it's important to understand, again, that we're looking for those creative solutions to get that aid in there. We're fully supportive of those measures. And it's also important to reiterate that Hamas bears sole responsibility for this conflict, as well as sole responsibility for the condition under which the people of Gaza are living. So I'm not going to put a timeline on it from here. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the foundation. But what I will reiterate is that we are supportive of creative solutions to get aid in there, but also in a way that the aid is not falling into the hands of Hamas, that it actually reaches the people that need it. Yes.
Yes, Tommy, thank you. I wanted to ask you about the president's trip to the Middle East. He had some comments today in terms of talking about the way that the U.S. approaches countries in the Middle East and the criticism of past policy, saying that for too long many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. There's been a critique of the State Department, I think, externally by some analysts about the changes to areas of the department that deal with issues of human rights and kind of what have been traditionally seen as U.S. values issues. Is this the president endorsing that shift in terms of the State Department's focus? Do you think that criticism that we've seen from civil society is accurate?
Look, I think the results speak for themselves in terms of what President Trump and Secretary Rubio have been able to deliver for the American people. The results they've been able to deliver. President Trump is a peacemaker. He is a deal maker, and he is constantly putting
There's no
Americans
peace. There's
first.
more wars
And
breaking
when we
out.
approach foreign policy,
Have you seen Yemen? We've bombed Yemen.
That allows opportunities to pursue.
So all you anti-war bullshit idiots
that allows us to have stronger bilateral relationships
that
where
you
we're
don't
finding
really
those
know
common
how
areas,
wars start
to
or
work
are
together on and advance
fought.
those common interests. As spokesperson Bruce
Give me
has
a
said many
break.
times from this podium, just because a framework changes does not mean that the priority necessarily changes as well. Oftentimes what we're seeing in
well,
terms of
you're going to
how
have
we're
to talk to
approaching the State
Marco
Department and
Rubio,
other
your
aspects,
boss,
are a
because
way to
he
deliver
talks
on our
about
priorities
the
better,
priority
more
always
effectively,
changing.
in a way that actually
And if
delivers
they
results
can't
for the
resolve it,
American
they'll
people.
just move
we are
on.
making sure every single dollar
Tommy.
that we spend from the State Department under Secretary Rubio is advancing the
Idiot.
American interest. Does it make us safer, stronger, more prosperous? And I think that's a standard that the American
You
people
haven't. You've
expect
made
us
us
to have
less
here at the
safe.
State
You
Department.
closed
They're
down
happy to see that, and the
USAID.
results, again, speak for
I
themselves.
can't stand these
With
journalists.
Perhaps the most successful, I would argue, the most
Why
successful
can't they be
100+
more
days in history.
combative?
In this past week, the results we have seen from President Trump speak
I'm
for
sorry.
themselves.
Why can't you be more combative,
Tommy.
especially in a State
Question
Department
about the new arrivals from
press
South
conference?
Africa that
Yeah,
landed in
Wario
Dulles
ethos,
yesterday.
ethos is all about peace.
UN's International Organization for
Yeah.
Migration has
Yeah.
told ABC that they were not involved in administering any loans. Now, typically, they would be the ones to run loans funded by the State Department to pay for refugees to come to the United States to cover those travel costs. Wondering, can you speak to how that travel was funded? Or say anything more about whether the State Department is giving out any loans in this case?
Well, look, I'm not going to talk about specific relationships we have with organizations. I'm also not going to talk about operational details.
Well, then why are you even here?
Implementing the priorities laid out.
Tommy,
by the
why
President
are
and
you
Secretary
here?
Rubio. The main bottom line
Yeah,
though,
it's the
is that
State
we
Department.
are
Why are you
implementing
even
those
here?
priorities. We are seeing the President's executive orders being delivered upon here at the State Department, and this is an example of that, of course, collaborating across different agencies. So we're going to continue seeing those priorities fulfilled, but I'm not going to comment here on
anything
operational details
of substance
or specifics of that nature.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. A question on Turkey, and I have a question on Iran too. Yesterday, the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK) declared it's the solution and
Did you see
to
this?
its armed struggle against Turkey. There were reports talking about that the U.S. played a positive role in this process as well, and even yesterday, Secretary Rubio spoke with his Turkish counterpart, and he spoke about this too. Have you played any role? Have you been involved in this? And what's your comment on that? Are you considering removing this group from the FTO?
I'm not going to speak about private diplomatic conversations nor preview decisions of that nature that may or may not be made.
The
What I
PKK
can
already
say
said
is
they
that we
laid
welcome
down
the
their
recent
weapons.
announcement
And
from
so
the
what are
Kurdistan
you
Workers'
saying?
Party on its intent to disband. The United States designated the PKK a foreign terrorist organization in 1997. Tens of thousands of people lost their lives as a result of armed conflict in the decades since the organization was founded, and a terrorist group laying down its arms
I don't know
is a
why I
victory for
expect anything
civilization.
different.
It is the United States' hope that this announcement will lead to increased
Really,
stability
Jim?
for the
I didn't
region.
know that.
And a question on Iran. You said that regarding Iran, negotiations continue to show progress. What progress have you made so far with Iran? And the next round of talks has been scheduled with Iran. Can you tell us what time or?
Nothing to preview on that front. What I can say is the president spoke to this just in his speech a few hours ago, talking about the time for choosing.
Nobody
for them
listens
is
to
right
him,
now.
Tommy.
There is a path to prosperity for Iran. He wants to see the entire region be prosperous. He's also been clear that there are two options for Iran. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, but there are two options in regards to that, a good option and a bad option. So
Hey,
the
Paul
president has
J.
spoken to this. He's made our priorities clear. He's made the goal clear, and I don't have anything additional to add beyond his comments there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. How does your State Department view the Bangladesh interim government's ordinance banning all activities of the largest political party, Awami League, one, as I told you, that one of the largest political parties, effectively erasing its political identity and barring its from future election? I just wanted to mention here in previous briefing, Tammy stressed the importance of election and democracy in Bangladesh, especially inclusive election. Now they banned this political party from the activities.
Which one? I'm interested.
So what I can say on this is that we are aware that the interim government has banned the Awami League from all political activities until a special tribunal for the party and its leaders concludes. We do not support any one political party in Bangladesh over another. We support a free and democratic process, as well as fair and transparent legal processes for all individuals. We urge all countries, including Bangladesh, to respect the freedoms of expression, peaceful assembly, and association for all.
And how does you, as a State Department, view the interim Bangladeshi government role in the fostering radical ideologies and enabling terrorism, following reports of the law advisor Dr. Asif Nazrul meeting with Lashkar-e-Taiba operative Harun Izhar and growing support of violence in Kashmir by political and religious leaders? They met in the ministry in Bangladesh.
So again, taking a step back, I'll reiterate what has been reiterated from this podium before. We value our partnership with the people of Bangladesh, spanning more than 50 years. We remain committed to deepening our partnership by working with the interim government. And I already commented on your other question there, but nothing further to add.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Two questions, one on the North Korea and then the second question about the Russia follows. As you know, that the North Korea launched the multiple ballistic missiles into the East Coast last week for the second time since the second term of the Trump administration. How do you view the fact that North Korea is receiving missile technology support from Russia, which is further escalating the threat to the Korean Peninsula?
So we've spoken on this in the past. I'll refer to those comments and take back your question for further details if we can get there.
The second question on Russia.
I can't access the chat from
said
my
that it will pay for the North Korean soldiers who died in Kursk during the war in Ukraine, and that Putin is preparing a new mission with the North Korean military. How will the United States react to the fact that North Korean troops will continue to be stationed in Russia and help Russia, even if Russia and Ukraine reach a ceasefire and war?
Well, as spokesperson Bruce has said from this podium, third countries like the DPRK that have perpetrated the Russia-Ukraine war bear responsibility. The DPRK's military deployment to Russia and any support provided by the Russian Federation, the DPRK, in return must end.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. A couple of questions from South Asia. During his calls with Pakistani Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and the Army Chief, when Secretary made a call, did he receive any commitment or assurance from the Pakistani leadership that they will dismantle all the terrorist infrastructure and they will no longer support terrorist
groups.
I put
within the
an
country?
article from
I'm not gonna talk
Deutsche
about
Welle
diplomatic conversations. What I
about
can
a
say
little
is
bit of
reiterate
context for
what
the
we've been saying,
Bangladesh situation.
for a couple days now.
So
is
I
that
haven't
we
read it
welcome
yet.
the ceasefire reached between India and
He's a
Pakistan
bill.
this weekend.
He's like
And
one
we
of those
commend both prime ministers for choosing the path of peace. The president
Peapod
truth
people that
about
aren't
this,
fully
he was very
formed.
clear in terms
Remember
of that.
those?
We also want to encourage direct communication between the parties.
He spends his
and that
weekends
is
on the
something we've also been
Chan.
clear about as well.
India has refused any U.S. effort to mediate
He has
between
mommy
India and
issues.
Pakistan. How hopeful you are that you will be able to bring them together
Deputy
in the same room
dog.
for talks?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that. What I can
I
say
have
is that we
deputy
encourage
dog,
direct
don't I?
communication. We have been
I have
clear on that.
Droopy,
We
I
continue to
guess.
encourage
He's not
that
deputy
direct
dog.
communication. The president
Where
has
is
been
deputy
clear on
dog?
that. And the president, as I said, has also been clear in praising
I
both
like
prime
deputy
ministers
dog.
for choosing the path towards peace and the wisdom and fortitude that shows.
Has U.S. sent a team to Islamabad
Oh,
or
maybe-
Pakistan
maybe I
following the reports that there have been leaks of nuclear
He's not Droopy.
radiation
Droopy
in
is
some
my
of the secured
favorite.
Pakistani sites?
I have nothing to preview on that at this time.
I have one more question.
Sorry,
Follow-up. Thank you.
I think that's
Thank you,
enough.
Tommy. Thank you, Tommy, and beautiful style you have, by the way. I hope you continue to do that more often, these briefings. My question is about
The fuck was that?
Welcome President Trump efforts for bringing the ceasefire between Pakistan and India, and they believe that President Trump could win a Nobel Peace Prize if he
Oh
were to
my
bring
God, here
peace
we go
between
again.
Pakistan and India.
More
on the
importantly,
Kashmir
here's
issue.
Deputy Dog. Just so
But
you
Prime
know.
Minister Modi did not welcome
Not
this
Droopy.
effort, and
I really
he's
had
the
my
same
deputy dog
gentleman that
mixed
was not
up.
allowed to come to
I don't
the
really
US
remember
till
him.
10 years ago. Does that disappoint this building at all? The attitude of Narendra Modi
There'll be something I like.
of not welcoming this peace
Droopy.
deal?
Oh,
Well, what we are
Bennett.
happy to
You mean
see
Mrs.
is
Beasley?
That's
Wait.
what we are happy to see. That's where our focus remains. And we want to see ceasefire be maintained. And we want to encourage direct communication. That is our focus here. Our focus is the ceasefire. Our focus is on encouraging direct communication. That's where our focus is going to remain. The president has spoken on this. And just to take the first part of your question, kind of focusing on a more global foreign policy front.
There's Droopy.
Talking about issues around the world, President Trump is a peacemaker. He's a peacemaker. He values
I'm
peace.
so
He's also a deal
happy.
maker. And he has shown that again and again. And
Oh,
again
blessed are the
in terms of
cheesemakers.
Both pursuing an America First agenda, but also
For they
pursuing
shall
peace. We
inherit
want
the
to see
earth.
peace
Is
and
that what
conflict
cheese making is? Oh, I
One
didn't
more
know that.
question about, excuse me, one more question.
Didn't it look like she did that?
The
Never
drones
mind.
which India used against
I think she's just
Pakistan
fucking
were
with them.
Israeli-made drones. President Trump, one initiative that has been globally recognized and talked about is his Abraham Accord idea. Do you think this landing of Israeli drones in Pakistan would create hurdles in the president's vision, his whole thought about this Abraham Accord where he wants to bring these three religions close to each other? These Israeli drones will further complicate the relations between
Mr. Besant,
Pakistan and Israel, or no?
He's not with
I'll
us today.
reiterate what we are focused on here and happy to see is a ceasefire. We want to see direct communication between the parties. And when it comes to, again, solving conflicts that have existed in regions around the world, the president wants to solve those conflicts when he
looks
can.
like Bob's
He's
Big
often
Boy,
said that he
which I
stands
don't
ready
think
to
I have a
aid,
picture of.
In the pursuit of peace, he stands ready to help. And the president is a deal maker. He is a peacemaker. He has shown that again and again. And we're seeing the results of that from the past.
What's on
100
your
days,
tape,
and
Tommy?
even
That's
just
what I
this
want to
last
know.
week. So the president's a deal maker. He's a peacemaker.
Boobs
but nothing will comment further beyond that.
What did I just? What was I? What was I googling?
President Trump, in addition
I
to
don't want to
lifting
tell
the
you what just
sanctions,
came up.
also said that he wants to create a fresh start with Syria.
Oh yeah, Bob's Big
You
Boy.
know, I wonder what
Not
does
boob
this
guy.
mean for the U.S.-Syria
shit.
relations going forward? Does this move indicate a broader policy shift towards full normalization? I also wonder. President Trump also said today that Secretary Rubio will meet Syrian Foreign Minister Al-Shaiban in Turkey later this week. What are your expectations from this meeting?
Well, the president spoke to this. He spoke to his reasoning. He spoke to the fact that he wants to see the entire region thrive. We want to see peace and prosperity. When it comes to Syrian interim authorities, from this podium and elsewhere, we've communicated with them some of the actions that they should take for peace and prosperity, and we hope that they do take those actions. But the president has spoken to this in that speech a few hours ago, saying that this is about making sure we have a region that can thrive, a region for long-term peace and prosperity. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up about the Secretary Rubio's trip as well to the Middle East. So
I'm sorry. I'm trying to find a really good picture of Bob's big boy. Leave me alone.
About the relationship between the U.S. and the Middle East and how important this relationship will be also to succeed through those countries like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, to the peace talk in between Gaza and Israel, but also to stop Iran from nuclear weapons.
The president has spoken to this issue as well just a few hours ago. And he was talking about the fact that we can have great partnership with the Middle East. And we have, in many ways, already pursuing those common interests. And we want to see those common interests continue. I mentioned at the top here the $600 billion investment commitment from Saudi Arabia that was announced today. So that's just one example of the many ways that we have partnership with the Middle East pursuing common interests. And the president has been clear, both from the time of the last administration, his first visit to the region, talking about the things that we want to see. So there's a lot of opportunities in the Middle East. And again, like I said earlier, this is about a golden age for America, but we also have an opportunity to see a golden age for the Middle East and the benefits that would bring both the American people and the people in the Middle East.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry,
in front of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Chick.
Two quick questions.
I want the chick to ask me a question. There we go. Hi, Bob's big boy. How you doing?
In a recent
I got your
past,
doppelganger
Secretary
right
Rubio
here.
said that the U.S. will not engage anymore with Russians and Ukrainians if both countries do not show real commitment with a permanent ceasefire.
That's who
How the U.S. diplomacy described this
Buenos
moment
dias. Hi,
when
Neil.
both sides are ready to meet
God
in
bless.
Turkey with alongside Secretary Rubio.
Well, as the president has said, this is a critical opportunity to try to achieve that
Roosevelt
ceasefire
Franklin
and try to achieve that long
Elementary
peace.
School.
The president has been clear he wants to see
Elementary
those
School.
direct talks happen. And I
love
think it's
that song.
also important to remember that the president has brought
What? I
us
find
closer
Barr
to
looks like
peace when it
Arthur.
comes
Some have
to this
told me
conflict,
that's
than
no.
in the
Barr
years
looks like
preceding,
Five Nights at
him
Freddy's.
taking office, and that's a great credit to his leadership.
Give me a
So
break.
he wants to see those direct talks happen.
He's a
This is
phenaf,
critical
if there ever
to
was
achieve
one.
that ceasefire and then potentially achieve.
I'm gonna
that
do a
long
side by
peace,
side. Hold on.
ultimately,
Give me a
with
minute.
the goal of ending this conflict, as has been said so many times by President Trump, so many times by spokesperson Bruce. We want to see this conflict come to an end. That's what we want to see.
On Latin America, very quickly, officials from the U.S. and Brazil, they convened here in Washington, D.C. yesterday to discuss disarmament, and according to the State Department, they discussed, for example, arms control with Russia and China. If you could address this matter.
Nothing further to preview than what we've already said on this, so I refer you to those comments. And with that, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bob's big boy. All right. Well, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator. What I'm going to next is this. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. Let me get the what I was gonna do, which is I was gonna add. Oh wait, I gotta do some artwork here. Hold on, because I gotta get Freddie, and then I gotta get a Bill Barr picture. Hold on. Oh, I'm gonna have to really do this. Okay, wait. What? Where's paint? Where's paint? Where's paint? Open it with paint. Why? 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 Okay, open and but we're just waiting for this thing to start. But wait, hold on. I gotta open this with, and then I gotta open it with that. And then I don't know if I have a good picture of Bill Barr that looks like that. Hold on. Yeah. Let's see. Can I get him oh yeah, actually. Those are pretty good. No, I'm trying to think of which Bill Barr picture looks the most like the Five Nights at Freddy thing I got going on here. Oh no, I'm so happy right now. Hold on. No, it just makes me have to find a different picture, but it's okay. I'll do it. For this, I'll do it. Oh my god. Oh shoot. Bar. Okay, so hold on. I'm doing some real artwork for you. Hold on. Okay, but I got to go back to Five Nights at Freddy's now because I have a different picture. And I'm going to have to get rid of that. Get rid of that. Oh, okay, wait. Well, this actually is pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to take this one. Freddy Fazbear. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Sorry, this is taking Freddy Fazbear. NG. Whoa.
The committee will come to order.
Scared me, shithead.
Today, this committee will move forward on President Trump's promise of delivering historic tax relief for working families, farmers, and small businesses. The one big, beautiful bill is the key to making America great again. This moment has been years in the making. While Democrats were defending IRS audits on the middle class and tax carve-outs for the wealthy, Republicans on this committee
I just want to know.
To hear from real Americans about how the 2017 tax cuts benefited them.
Sorry.
This bill wasn't drafted by special interests or K Street lobbyists.
That was me.
It was drafted by the American people in communities across the country. We heard from a mother in Iowa, Sarah Curry, who can afford the care required for her son living with disabilities because of lower taxes and the double child tax credit the 2017 tax cuts delivered. We met another Iowan, a farmer named Jolene Reason, who takes comfort knowing her sons won't have to sell off the family's farm's acreage thanks to a double death tax exemption. An accountant for small businesses in Georgia, Allison Couch, shared how the small business tax deduction
I thought she was a renowned artist.
Create jobs. And a North Carolina manufacturer, Courtney Silver, was able to give every employee a raise, expand her workforce by 20%, and start an apprenticeship program training the next generation because of the tax relief delivered in 2017. After the Trump tax cuts went into effect, real household incomes grew by $5,000. Prices were stable. 5 million jobs were created. Investment poured into every corner of America, and the economy grew faster than so-called experts in Washington ever predicted. If the Trump tax cuts expire, every single American will face, on average, a tax increase of 22%. Democrats who vote against this tax relief will be voting for the largest tax hike in American history. The loss of the small business deduction would destroy jobs and shutter doors on Main Street. Working class communities would be devastated by the loss of more than 1 million manufacturing jobs. Family farms would be sold off. This bill makes the 2017 tax cuts permanent, locking in lower tax rates for workers, small businesses, and farmers. These provisions offer the certainty and support small businesses and manufacturers need to invest in America and bring back the economic prosperity of President Trump's first term. The 2017 Trump tax cuts gave a boost to workers. The new 2025 Trump tax cuts will provide even more tax relief by delivering on President Trump's promise to hardworking Americans. And it provides that relief immediately. A single mom waiting tables will no longer owe taxes to the federal government on her hard-earned tips. The linemen who worked countless hours restoring power in the aftermath of devastating natural disasters in places like North Carolina and my home state of Missouri will no longer pay taxes on overtime pay. Seniors like my aunt, who had to take a job as a door greeter at our local Walmart to supplement her Social Security income after the loss of my uncle, her husband, will receive much needed tax relief in this bill. Working families will be spared from a $1,700 tax hike. Parents will benefit from a 25% increase in the child tax credit that will grow with inflation and get help with the high cost of childcare, adoption, and education. Americans will pay less for health care through expanded eligibility for health savings accounts, the elimination of bureaucratic waste and abuse, and the end of illegal immigrant access to Obamacare's premium tax credits. Main Street will grow again. This legislation makes the small business deduction permanent and increases it to 23%, helping small businesses compete with larger corporations with a lower rate. Mom and pop businesses will power the economy to new heights, adding 1 million new jobs annually and over $750 billion in growth over the next decade. Opportunity zones will ensure low-income and distressed communities, especially those in rural areas, share in this surge of new investments, new jobs, and new possibilities. 2 million family-owned farms and small businesses will benefit from a death tax exemption that is larger, permanent, and indexed to inflation, keeping the legacy of family farming alive in America. This tax bill will jumpstart a revival of manufacturing in our country. We are delivering on the president's pledge of lower taxes for companies who make the smart choice to build new factories in America. Working-class families buying American-made cars will pay no taxes on their auto loan interest. And business will boom with a restored R&D credit, full expensing, and interest deductibility, creating jobs here at home and helping America compete abroad. The story of American manufacturing will transform from one of lost jobs, abandoned factories, and forgotten towns to good-paying jobs for Americans in new, state-of-the-art facilities. This bill also means the end of Washington's special treatment of wealthy elites. Exclusive universities with the largest endowments, many whom have failed to protect their Jewish students, will pay an endowment tax as high as the corporate tax rate. Democrats' bad tax policies that shower the wealthy, the big banks, and China with billions of dollars of special interest tax breaks will be replaced by good tax policy, helping the working class. Illegal immigrants will no longer be able to claim the refundable tax credits. Foreign nations will no longer profit from the Biden-era surrender of our tax revenues. Hardworking Americans like waitresses, mechanics, nurses, and farmers are the winners of this tax bill. Pro-growth tax policy will shift our economy
the tax on tips and shit isn't in there yet, by the way.
Not the wealthy and well-connected.
Okay, just so you know.
A 3.2% boost in long-run GDP will translate to $4,500 of more income for the average family. My Democrat colleagues will continue to ignore the facts and make false claims about who benefits from this bill. These are the same falsehoods they repeated after the 2017 tax cuts, under which the share of taxes paid by the wealthy increased, while lower-income Americans paid less. I come from a community in Missouri of less than 5,000 people. Today, 1 in 6 of people there live in poverty. I grew up, a family of 4, most of my life in a single-wide trailer. My priority is the working class because I'm a product of the working class. This bill delivers
Oh my God.
for those American families.
Wait, what happened?
Just like mine, who have struggled to
Car
get
dealership
ahead
just called, offered
for
her more
far
money
too
than
long.
what she paid for it. Oh my
Where
gosh.
I come from,
They
you
must
work
really
until the
want
job is done.
used cars.
The American people, they
Oh yeah, it
expect
will.
They voted
But
for
we've
it.
got some good graphics.
They deserve
Hold
it,
on.
and they are tired of political grandstanding.
We've got Bob's Big
They
Boy.
want real relief, and Congress must deliver
We've got John
it as
McCain.
quickly as possible. I urge all of my colleagues to put aside the politics,
arm. God,
focus on
do
the
some
people,
fucking bicep
and
lifts.
vote to advance this bill.
Okay.
Remember the
And
Americans
then we have Billy
met
Fazbear,
traveling on the
also known
road,
as Billy
and
Barr.
the people in each of your districts who are better off today
Modeled after this guy.
thanks
Hold on.
to the Trump tax cuts. Together with the one big,
Together
beautiful bill, we can
forever,
ignite the second
together
Trump economic
forever.
boom and improve the lives of millions of our neighbors back home. I'm now pleased to recognize the ranking member from Massachusetts,
This is
Mr.
Philly
Neal, for his opening statement.
Freddie Fazbear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So here we are. One big, beautiful tax cut for billionaires legislation.
Tell me that doesn't look like Bill Barr.
Republican
Give me a break.
pathology with
Bill
tax
Barr
cuts
is
for wealthy
Freddie
people
Fazbear.
continues.
That's it. Hello.
The theology for a long time, until it was put to rest, was that tax cuts would pay for themselves. Well,
why don't rich people help out more?
Then we heard in the middle of the Iraq War, the Republican whip in the House of Representatives say, quote, it was patriotic to cut taxes in a time of war. Then we were told it would always be about accelerated growth. Well, we'll take the Clinton growth rates any day. In 2017, our colleagues on the Republican side passed a tax law that was supposed to pay for itself, raise wages, and help working families. None of that happened. Instead, it exploded the deficit, worsened inequality, and left everyday Americans behind. This bill, as currently proposed, will cut health care from 14.
Okay, it's important. This is a rules. This is a markup of the one big beautiful bill, and I'm scared of this one big beautiful bill. And I've been trying to get my arms around what's in and what's out. A lot has changed apparently of what's in the big beautiful bill. So I do have some sources on that, but this is a markup by the Ways and Means Committee.
Million members of the
so
American
it's
family.
Tedious, but
now
important.
They want to double down on the same playbook, one that rigs the system for billionaires while everybody else pays the price. Here's the real they're going to ignore the baseline for 2017, just make people think it never happened. So they borrowed $2.3 trillion in 2017 for a tax cut that did not impel greater growth. They don't want to even pay attention to that. The other part of this, how about raising the debt ceiling by $4 trillion to pay for their tax cut?
$4 trillion. That's why they need the...
Let's be clear. The Trump economy didn't work for all American families then, and it won't work now.
Sorry.
What we've seen is the continued chaos. No real trade deals, no lower prices, no economic stability, empty ports, anxious markets, and rising costs, while the president blames everybody but himself. Complain about the debt on Monday, and then borrow $4 trillion on Tuesday to add to the debt. This legislation pours gasoline on the fire that's already burning. Americans are buckling under the chaos that our Republican colleagues have helped to create, and this bill will make it worse. No wonder a strong majority of Americans believe that this could trigger a recession. They're right. This isn't about growth or prosperity. It's about protecting the ultra-wealthy again. Let me point something else out that's really important. We haven't seen the Joint Committee on Taxation distribution tables yet. You know why? Because that shows who will get what. And it'll give the American people a chance to contrast what's going to happen to those at the top and what's going to happen to those at the bottom who will get $1 a day in tax relief. 70% of the benefits in this bill go to the top 20% of the American family. That's before the Trump tariff tax takes $2,800 out of our household budgets each year, and then Republicans gutting health care that will just drive people to emergency rooms when the hospitals don't close. That's not a tax plan, it's a wealth grab. While the richest Americans are raking in piles of cash, they want to gut the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP. This bill is the greatest loss of health care in our history. According to the Congressional Budget Office, 14 million Americans will lose their health care plan. 2 in 5 pregnancies are covered by Medicaid. It funds long-term care, addiction services, mental health treatments. We all know people that have those challenges and problems. They're our constituents. Cuts like these will devastate families and entire communities, especially in rural areas. And what are they offering in exchange for this pain? The same tired promises that tax cuts automatically will give you more growth, even though the CBO says that's false. In fact, extending that tax scam could conceivably slow the economy, not expand it. It doesn't have to be this way. Republicans have chosen this path. They could have extended the expanded child credit, cut poverty in half. They could have made the ACA subsidies permanently. They could have made meaningful progress with long-term care and housing. Instead, another $2 trillion giveaway to the wealthiest Americans. When they start talking about the deficits, don't forget $10 trillion worth of tax cuts that have never been paid for. They'll use this hole as an excuse to come to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security next. It's the same pattern. Blow up the budget, then gut the programs that people rely on. We deserve a tax system that works. We deserve peace of mind and not the fear that our retirement plans will be taken away. We will continue to fight for the future as Democrats, and we intend to lay out for the American people precisely what this legislation means. It is a tax cut for billionaires. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Our only business today is consideration of the committee print providing legislative recommendations to comply with the reconciliation directives included in Section 2001 of the concurrent resolution on the budget for fiscal year 2025, HCON Res 14. The committee will now proceed to consideration of the committee print.
Mr. Chairman, at this point, I want to reserve a right to object to your unanimous consent request and raise a point of order concerning its consideration.
So the next line is without objection?
It is with objection, with a reservation of objection. Hopefully, I can not object.
State your objection, gentlemen.
Surely. Mr. Chairman, I just asked to be heard briefly about the amendment and the nature
State
of
your
my
objection.
My point of order is under House Rule 16, Clause 7, in that your 28-page bill that you filed Friday night is now a 389-page bill, that it includes multiple provisions that were not in any way referenced on Friday night, from the SALT cap to the $20 billion voucher plan to just one provision after another. And under House Rule 16, Clause 7, it is designed to help the members of Congress properly legislate by knowing what's going to be considered before we act. I have people in my district who will spend months researching a $40,000 car. We're being asked to consider a $5 trillion tax bill where we don't have the information since this bill deviates so much from the one that was filed Friday night. I have, Mr. Chairman, the House Practice Manual, and it makes very clear that on page 565 that the burden of proof is on the offerer of an amendment that deviates so fundamentally, and that this applies to amendments in the nature of a substitute. So I just ask you to clarify perhaps your broad definition of germaneness, if that is your position, will be applied similarly to any Democratic amendment that would be offered. But I'm trying to ensure that we don't have one standard that applies to your amendment and another standard that applies to mine or the others that might be offered. So perhaps you could just explain why you think this is germane to what you offered on Friday night.
The House substitute that we provides with all House rules. And so the gentleman is more than happy to discuss any of the conversations when we move forward within the substitute.
So your position is that our amendments, for example, to deal with the Affordable Care Act enhanced credits, though they're not dealt with directly in your bill, that germaneness will permit us to debate all of those matters on the merits?
We'll consider case-by-case basis as we move forward.
Sometimes your consideration tends to run a little one way.
You've stated your objection. We're going to move on.
All right. Well, my objection, I raise a point of order that
state your point of order.
The amendment in the nature of a substitute is not germane to the base bill because it includes multiple provisions: SALT, the vouchers, the denial of health care.
The gentleman will suspend for a moment.
Surely.
The amendment as a nature of a substitute hasn't been called up yet, so it's not timely to raise a point of order at this moment on
Well, you're about to make a unanimous consent request that we dispense with any objection. So if you want to make that request, I will renew.
I was about to say the measure will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point if there's no objection.
Are you referring to the amendment in the nature of a substitute?
We are not there yet.
I don't know.
When you're there, I have a reservation of objection.
So I
And it
dropped a
will be
couple
somewhat
links in
similar to
there
the one I just stated.
with perspectives on the what's in the big beautiful
Without
bill.
objection, the measure
I haven't
will
read
be
a couple of
considered as
yet,
read and
so
open for amendment at any
take them
point.
for what their sources are
At
worth.
this time, I offer
but
an amendment in the nature
should be
of a
pretty
substitute,
straightforward
which was distributed
information.
in advance, along with the green sheet explaining it. Without objection, the
Mr.
amendment
Chairman,
in
at that point, I would reserve an objection and raise a point of order.
and that is the appropriate time.
Thank you very much.
That is not the
May I be-
appropriate time. Does the gentleman wish to reserve a point of order on germaneness?
I reserve a point of order under the House rule that I cited, hoping that we can comply with the rules, or if you're adjusting
Wow,
the
they're
rules,
only
that it
doing
will
eliminate
apply the
taxes
same
on
to
tips and
Democrats as
overtime
Republicans.
through 2028.
House Rule 16, Clause 7.
Everything phases
The
down.
committee is complying with all House rules, and we will
Holy
continue
shit.
to comply with all House rules.
Mr. Chairman,
This is a piece of shit.
You're not complying with House Rule 16,
Doggett
Clause
knows.
7,
Lloyd
which
Doggett
applies
knows. Don't
to
fuck with
amendments
him.
in the nature of a substitute of this type.
He's been in Congress longer than
and
that
it's
douchebags have been alive.
Obvious from your expansion from 28 pages to 8.
Would the gentleman suspend?
Surely.
Because I can't hear myself think. Sure. Oh. Buddy, calm down. Poor order. I'll tell you what a poor order.
After I read this next line, the gentleman would have the opportunity to make the objection. So,
Sorry to jump
or
the gun,
to
but
raise
it's
the point of order on germaneness. Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read, open for amendment at any point, and considered base text for purpose of amendment.
Mr. Chairman, at that point, I would reserve.
If there's elections, Neil. I have an article about that
raise a
too. Oh my
point of
God.
order.
This is the time you need to raise it, not reserve it.
Well, I'm reserving it because I'm hopeful that you'll give me an explanation that germaneness would apply the same way to Democratic amendments as you have applied it to your amendment in the nature of a substitute. And if that's not the case, and there's some possibility that our amendments will be rejected as non-germane, while yours, which is obviously non-germane, is okay to consider, I'm willing to withdraw the objection.
What?
Really was hoping to get more insight from you about your approach to germaneness and the vast change in this bill from Friday night, which gave us almost no time to prepare amendments or to be prepared to discuss its multiple provisions of a big, beautiful bill. And I'm hoping that the House rules will be followed more closely
Yeah,
than the
he
rule
is
of
definitely
law has
most
been
annoying.
followed
No,
by
you've
the
really hit on
administration.
the ultimate thing.
So the amendment in the nature of a substitute is germane, and we'll move forward as it being germane.
Mr. Chairman, I raise a point of order against further consideration.
I guess they're
of
substituting the
amendment
short
and
bill
request to vote
for the
on my
longer
point of
bill.
order, as described, that the amendment in the nature of the substitute is not germane to the base bill. It legislates on a different subject matter. It has a different fundamental purpose.
Really?
From the bill that you noticed, and the burden is on you to show germaneness, and you've done nothing to show germaneness
Oh,
here.
so he's saying,
Not
why
only
are
not
you
met your
able
burden,
to?
You've not even offered an explanation as to why you deviated.
Why
from
did
a
you
bill of
substitute
28 pages and went to
this bill? Yeah.
389
Why did you
pages
substitute this
with
bill at the
more
last
new
minute?
provisions than you had old provisions.
That's what he's saying.
Okay, so the chair is prepared to rule that this is germane, so you're objecting to that and you want to...
I want a record vote on it.
Okay, so
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
you can't entertain another point of order while this is pending.
Can I ask a question about this vote before us, before we vote?
It's not debatable or discussion. We're going to it.
No discussion of germaneness, in other words. You're just going to rule on germaneness with no discussion
Does
of
the
germaneness?
gentleman wish to be heard on his point of order on germaneness?
I do.
Proceed.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I believe you are taking a very expansive view of germaneness when you add multiple provisions that are wholly unrelated to the 28 pages that you presented us on Friday evening.
I mean, you know,
that Friday evening presentation
those
seemed
are the
to be
rules.
designed to minimize scrutiny of what you were doing. But not included in that 28 pages is any mention of SALT whatsoever, a matter that seems to have gendered some discussion in not
State
only
and local
the Democratic
taxes,
caucus,
you know how
but
you
in the
can write
Republican
off a certain
caucus.
amount.
Your expansive definition includes an entirely new $20 billion voucher system that seems to encourage parents to abandon our public schools. You help throw millions of Americans out of their health plan. You repeal all the renewable energy credits. That was not in Friday night, which have been generating so many new jobs, especially in Republican districts. You've given the Trump administration dangerous new authority to impose capital punishment on nonprofit universities, civic, and charitable organizations. And you have established a new category of tax-preferred savings accounts, which were not in the base bill. House Rule 16, Clause 7 is designed to help all of us on both sides of the aisle, as members of Congress, be prepared to legislate. It's designed to prevent hasty, ill-considered decisions. You know, Mr.
They eliminated
Chairman,
the
last
SALT
Tuesday,
deductions?
It was Speaker Johnson himself who said that the legislation that we're considering right now would, quote, be the most important,
I haven't itemized
most
taxes
consequential legislation
since I was
that
married,
we'll ever
so
be involved in
I've been
our lifetimes.
just
and
fucked
arguably
to
one
the
of the
max
biggest
on
in the history of
taxes all
Congress.
these years, but
Shouldn't
whatever.
a matter of such importance, according to the Speaker, be in full compliance with the rules of the House of Representatives? At such a momentous measure, we ought to be complying with the House rules, and the precedents are clear. Under the House, there have been bills brought to the floor that have been rejected because they did not comply with the House rules. On Friday night, you set out what we were supposed to be prepared to legislate on Tuesday, and then hours ago, you totally altered it. If, as you and the President have been describing it, this is one big, beautiful bill, I have to say it's certainly hidden beauty. You certainly didn't want anyone admiring the flawless beauty very closely. By introducing a new subject matter not contemplated in Friday's base text and changing the fundamental purpose of measures before us today, this proposed substitute is manifestly non-germane. If you're rejecting the bill that you introduced on Friday night and asking us to consider this monstrosity, that is your right. But it is a right that can only be exercised after proper notice to us, which means giving members
I think
the
there.
requisite
I don't know
time
if there's
to
a
read,
change to
to
the old
understand it,
caps.
and to prepare any necessary
I think
amendments,
that
and to have the information that the ranking member referred to that we lack from the Joint
the
Committee on
the
Taxation.
Axios article, although I hate
Chairman, I would
the
just
bank rate
particularly,
article that I
address your
linked
attention to page 565
has
of the discussion of this rule in the House
has
Practice
some
Manual, which I brought
basic
along with me.
language about the current what's
Since
in
under
the
House rules,
389-page
you as
bill.
the sponsor of this gigantic new amendment bear the burden of proof that it is germane to the underlying 28 pages. I would just ask you to explain how it is germane and assure us that if you're applying what appears to be a very liberal interpretation of germaneness, that you do the same for any amendment that may be offered by any member of the committee.
The chair is prepared to rule. The gentleman from Texas makes the point of order that the amendment proposed is non-germane. The amendment is in order, and the point of order is overruled.
Mr. Chairman, on that, I would ask for a record vote.
Could I have a point of clarification, please, Mr.
You
Chairman?
have to.
Oh, pardon?
You have to appeal the decision
I'm
of the chair.
appealing the decision of the chair and asking for a record vote on that.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a point of clarification?
It's no discussion, a pending motion.
I can't make ask for a point of clarification?
No. What is the, I mean, we can. What is the clarification?
I would like you just to clarify why the bill that you put in, the amendment in the nature of a substitute, is germane.
Because it is germane. Mr. Buchanan.
So there's no rationale behind it, just because you say so.
Go ahead. The gentleman, Mr. Buchanan, is recognized for a
Yeah,
motion.
it got capped on at 10,000, and
Because I said so?
God, I just read this, and I'm just like,
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr.
let me see
Buchanan.
if I can quickly find it.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan, yes. Mr. Smith of Nebraska.
Yes.
Mr. Smith of Nebraska, yes. Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly, yes. Mr. Schweikert. Mr. Schweikert, yes. Mr. LaHood.
Wait,
Mr.
are
Arrington.
those in there?
Mr. Arrington, yes. Mr. Estes.
To pay
Mr.
for the
Estes,
TCGA,
yes.
JA,
Mr.
okay,
Smucker.
they.
Mr. Smucker, yes. Mr. Hearn. Mr. Hearn, yes. Mrs. Miller. Mrs. Miller, yes.
They raised the
Dr.
cap to
Murphy.
30,000 on salt.
Dr. Murphy, yes.
But
Mr.
then there's
Kustoff.
another one in here
Mr.
that I didn't
Kustoff,
realize.
yes.
Eliminating taxes for people who earn less than
Mr.
150,000.
Fitzpatrick,
Is that
yes.
really in this
Mr.
bill?
Stubbe.
Because I know they've talked about
Stubbe,
that, but
yes.
is that really in this
Ms.
bill?
Tinney.
No.
Ms. Tinney, yes. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, yes.
Well, but those
Mr.
are the
Moore.
campaign trail. Bank
Mr.
rate.
Moore,
God,
yes.
I fucking hate
Ms.
people.
Van
Like
Dyne.
fucking.
Ms. Van Dyne, yes.
Tell me what's in the
Mr.
goddamn
Feenstra.
bill.
Mr. Feenstra, yes.
Ugh.
Ms.
And yeah, I
Maliatakis.
could go to it,
Ms.
but that's
Maliatakis,
also
yes.
fucking
Mr.
impossible to
Carey.
get through.
Mr. Carey, yes.
Sorry.
Mr. Yakum.
That really makes me mad.
Mr. Yakum,
Like, make
yes.
it easier.
Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, yes. Mr. Bean.
Let me see if Ballotpedia
Mr. Bean,
has
yes.
it. Maybe they
Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran, yes. Mr. Neal. Mr. Neal, no. Mr. Doggett. Mr. Doggett, no. Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, no.
What's the name of
Mr.
the law,
Larson.
or what's the name of the
Mr.
bill?
Larson, no. Mr. Davis.
What's it called?
Mr. Davis, no. Ms. Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez, no. Ms. Sewell. Ms. Sewell, no.
Okay, I need the
Ms.
fucking
Delbene.
big beautiful bill.
Ms. Delbene, no. Ms. Chu. Ms. Chu, no. Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, no. Mr. Boyle. Mr. Boyle, no. Mr. Byer. Mr. Byer, no.
Here we go.
Mr. Evans.
No.
Mr. Evans, no. Mr. Schneider. Mr. Schneider, no. Mr. Panetta.
Here it is.
Mr. Panetta,
I'll-
no.
I'll send.
Mr.
I'll
Gomez.
share it with you.
Mr. Gomez, no. Mr. Horsford. Mr. Horsford, no. Ms. Plaskett. Ms. Plaskett, no. Mr. Swazi. Mr. Swazi, no. Mr. LaHood.
Okay, there is the actual draft of the bill.
Chairman Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Smith, yes.
The clerk will report the vote.
The yeses are 25, the nos are 19.
There being 25 yeses and 19 nos, the appeal is tabled. I will
Appeal?
now turn to
The
Tom
appeal?
Bartold, Chief of Staff for the Joint Committee on Taxation, Josh Sneed, Chief Trade Counsel, Patrick Dumas, Staff Director of the Subcommittee on Health, and Sean Freeman, Deputy General Counsel, to provide the technical description of the amendment and the nature of a substitute with an emphasis on the changes made since introduction.
Never
I ask
trust
that
a bill
members
that
hold their questions
Donald
until after
Trump
their
named.
presentations.
Chairman Smith, Mr. Neal, members of the committee, you have before you several joint committee documents, JCX 18, 19, and 20, which describe the mark as noticed, and more relevant for today's proceeding, JCX 21 and
Yeah.
JCX 22R, which describe the chairman's amendment in the nature of a substitute with respect to the tax provisions of the legislation that's before you. The legislation makes a substantial number of changes. I'll try to briefly highlight a number of them. In general, as was noted in the opening statement, the legislation would extend and make permanent almost all of the provisions of Public Law 11597 that were otherwise scheduled to expire at the end of this year. While extending those provisions, it does make a number of modifications. So, for example, the rate schedule that was established in the 2017 legislation is extended and made permanent. The standard deduction that was increased in the 2017 legislation is extended and made permanent. And the Section 199A special deduction for pass-through businesses is extended and made permanent, but each of these is also modified in terms of the indexing that was the indexing of the thresholds of the breakpoints and the values under those provisions by providing an additional year of inflation indexing in the calculation of each year's indexed change. In addition, the standard deduction for 4 years from 2025 through 2028 has an increase in value of $1,000 for single taxpayers, $1,500 for head of household filers, and $2,000 for joint filers. The child tax credit, which is extended permanently by the legislation, has for 4 years, 2025 through 2028, an increase in value to $2,500, and also on a permanent basis makes changes in terms of requiring Social Security requirements to be eligible to claim the child tax credit. The Section 199A,
and then it goes to 2,000. It doesn't go back.
Deduction that I already mentioned.
Not where I read.
Has its deduction amount increased from 20 to 23%, modifies the test for the limit based on either wage or capital.
They throw a couple crumbs in there, but they're phased out after a few years.
Describing this that was passed out to you, there's an error, 2 errors on page 22 where it incorrectly references 22% rather than the 23% deduction increase that I just mentioned. The estate and gift tax.
The provisions restrict eligibility for premium tax credits and Medicare coverage based on immigration status.
Exemption. That amount is indexed and is made permanent. The legislation repeals the old PEAS limitation on itemized deductions, but enacts in its place, effective for next year, a limit on the
Corporate
value
charitable
of
contributions are limited to 10% of taxable
35%
income,
that would
with a new
generally
floor
affect
of
only
1%.
taxpayers in the top income tax bracket of 37%. In addition, the 2017 legislation had enacted a limitation on the deduction of state and
Phase
local
out of
taxes,
clean
the so-called
electricity production
SALT,
and investment
limitation.
credits.
The legislation before you would increase the current
Termination
year
of clean
$10,000
vehicle
limitation
credits
to $30,000. This would be phased out for taxpayers with a modified adjusted gross income in excess of $400,000. And in addition, this legislation limits certain substitute payments such as pass-through entity taxes that a number of states have enacted to enable taxpayers to mitigate the effects of this limitation. The legislation before you also enacts an exclusion on tip income. The exclusion applies to tips that are reported on W-2 wage statements. It requires reporting requirements. It's available to both itemizers and non-itemizers, and this would be effective for years 2025 through 2028. The legislation also provides an income tax deduction for qualified overtime. This would apply to all taxpayers other than to highly compensated taxpayers.
Yeah,
there
I
are
remember
reporting
that guy.
requirements established under the
He was so
legislation.
weird.
And this provision would apply years 2025
Didn't they
through
say simple
2028.
bills only?
An
Thank you,
additional
Max. That's
increase
exactly what they
in
said.
this,
They lie.
An additional increase in the deduction for taxpayers age 65 or older is provided for years 2025 through 2028. The increased amount is $4,000 per eligible taxpayer. It is phased out for taxpayers with higher incomes. The legislation also provides an exclusion of up to $10,000 of qualified automobile loan interest for
all the
vehicles that are
10,000 of interest?
assembled
I
domestically.
think that's lower than it was.
This interest exclusion would apply for years 2025 through 2028. The legislation also increases the amount of refundability of the adoption credit to up to $5,000 on a permanent basis. There is an error in the description in the document that was passed out before you. To be clear, this provision would be effective for years after 2024. The charitable deduction, the limited charitable deduction for non-itemizers is reinstated, I should say, in this legislation. It applies for
This
years
comparison or this
2025 through
document gives me a
2028.
summary, but doesn't give me all of the old.
Business provisions, the legislation
What it replaces.
enacts effective for property placed in service after January 19th, 2025 and through the end of calendar year 2029, 100% bonus depreciation. The legislation also provides for full expensing of domestic research expenditures under Code Section 174, again, applicable for years expenditures incurred in years 2025 through 2029. The legislation reinstates the adjusted income limitation on deductible business interest by reference to EBIT rather than EBITDA, again, effective for interest payments in 2025 through 2029. The legislation freezes and makes permanent the current levels of the deduction amounts under the FDII and the GILTI and the tax rate under the BEAT regimes. For manufacturing property, for years 2025 through 2032, 100% depreciation is permitted. This is generally for property, for structures that are engaged in manufacturing activities. A second round of opportunity zones is established with an emphasis on increasing the number and opportunities in rural zones. The legislation increases the expensing permitted under Code Section 179, generally applicable to smaller businesses, to $2.5 million. The legislation also repeals just garbled that, forgive me. The legislation establishes a tiered structure, an increased level and tiered structure of excise taxes on university endowments and private foundations. It creates a new code section 899, which provides remedies against unfair foreign taxes. Generally, this would increase certain
it does add a tax level of 39.6% for taxpayers making, for single taxpayers making $2.5 million or more per year.
Residents in those countries
So
that are
we're getting those
non-baby
non-baby makers. Okay, they're going to get hurt.
Regimes. And the legislation would also establish a new excise tax on remittances from persons in the United States paid to persons in another country.
Hurting
there's
immigrants.
Many other provisions in the legislation.
Immigrant families.
I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the members might have.
The usual.
It's just a general overview.
A lot of stuff that hurts immigrants, a lot of stuff requiring a Social Security number now that didn't previously, a lot of things.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Neal, and members of the committee. I have simply one trade provision to cover today. Section 112031 modifies Section 321 of the Tariff Act of 1930, which is commonly referred to as the de minimis law, in two ways. First, it adds a new penalty provision applicable to violations of U.S. law through de minimis shipments. The level of penalty is up to $5,000 for the first violation and $10,000 for any subsequent violation. These penalty levels are the same as those included in Representative Murphy's bill that this committee marked up in April of 2024, and also are the same as those included in former Representative Blumenauer's de minimis bill. The effective date for this penalty provision is 30 days after enactment. Second, it repeals Section 321A2C of the Tariff Act of 1930, which provides an $800 threshold value for de minimis shipments and is the provision under which commercial shipments currently may qualify for de minimis treatment. The effective date of this change is July 1st, 2027. The separate provisions in the statute providing de minimis treatment for bona fide gifts or for articles accompanying persons arriving in the United States remain unchanged. This concludes my walkthrough, and I welcome any technical questions.
Thank you. Mr. DeMaw, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Neal, and members of the committee. The amendment in the nature of a substitute contains three provisions amending Medicare statute. Section 111.201 amends Sections 1861 and 1834 of the Social Security Act to allow otherwise eligible facilities that closed between January 1st, 2014 and December 26th, 2020 to reopen under the Rural Emergency Hospital designation. Section 112.104 adds a new section to Part E of Title 18 of the Social Security Act to limit Medicare benefit eligibility only for U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, certain Cuban individuals and individuals living in the United States through a compact of free association.
What?
Section 112.204 adds a new section to Part E of Title 18 of the
Hi,
Social
Jen
Security Act
Griffey.
to
Hi,
require the
girly
Secretary
girl.
of
Sorry, I
Health
didn't
and
even
Human
see.
Services to contract with
Yeah,
artificial
I know.
intelligence vendors and
Make
data
E. coli
scientists
great again.
to identify, reduce, and recoup improper payments
I
under
don't know,
Medicare
Karen. That's
and
such a
report
good
on such
question about the
progress.
car. I
This
don't
concludes
know.
the
Is there an
technical
American
walkthrough of the
car
Medicare
anymore? I
provisions
don't
of
think
this
so.
title.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. You
Not
are
the way the
recognized.
world is.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Neal, and members of the Committee on Ways and Means. In addition to the matters covered by Mr.
here we go.
Bartold, Sneed, and Dumas, and in compliance with the reconciliation instructions provided by House Concurrent Resolution 14, the Chairman's amendment in the nature of a substitute includes a provision that increases by exactly $4 trillion the general limitation on public debt imposed by Section 3101 of Title 31 of the United States Code, and that was most recently reestablished on January 2, 2025, following a debt limit suspension period that ran from June 3, 2023 through January 1, 2025, in accordance with Section 401B of Public Law 118-5. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Neal, and members of the committee. This concludes my walkthrough, and I welcome any technical questions related to this provision of the amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to ask a technical question? Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barthold, let me start with a simple question. What has the JCT reported as the fiscal impact of this bill that's being considered by the committee today?
Mr. Neal, as reported, the tax provisions only are in JCX 2225R, which is made available to all the members. And we reported the total for fiscal years 25 through 2034 as minus $3.819 trillion.
Thank you. As you know, it's the standard practice for JCT
the
to
de minimis
report the
stuff is
cost
a
of
lot
tax
about the
bills over a
merchants and
10-year
stuff.
budget window. I've noticed that the document that you cited, that in one of those
Lower
10
some
years that
reporting.
included fiscal 2025, even though that fiscal year is now almost over, would a bill that is being considered in May of 2025 normally include?
Oh my God. One of the provisions, you guys, repeal of excise tax on indoor tanning services. I got to take a picture of that. I'm really sorry.
2025 in the budget
God
window?
help us.
And similarly, wouldn't that score instead include the
Who's
year
still
2020
tanning? That's what I
2035
want to
window?
know.
Mr. Neal,
Who's
in the
still
routine
tanning?
course, we would report through 2035, consistent with the Congressional
Right?
Budget Office macroeconomic baseline for the.
My God, it's not 1989 once it's
is under the rules for
dumb
the
shit back.
the
I mean, I
current
tanned a
budget
lot. Okay, I'm not
reconciliation
gonna lie.
provision.
Instructions.
Resolution.
But I'm an idiot.
Instructions?
Are you gonna be like
So
me?
let me ask you this, Tom. Has JCT prepared an estimate of what this bill would cost under
Really?
our standard
Yeah,
budget
seriously.
window rather than the bespoke budget window that's been requested by the Republican colleagues?
I do not have that at this time. We will be working on that, and it will be provided to all the members of the committee as soon as we are able to do so.
So looking at those numbers, Tom, it seems clear that if my colleagues used the standard budget window, the cost would be well in excess of $4 trillion. And that's not even counting the gimmicks that have been used to make much of the policy temporary. So let me move on to the Republican claims that, notwithstanding the eye-popping JCT score, which, by the way, is even higher than I thought, of this bill, that they're being fiscally responsible. Now, one of those ways in Republican claims that these tax cuts
It's
will
big
drive so much
bodacious
growth
bullshit.
that they will increase revenue. In fact, Mr. Barthold, the chairman of the Budget Committee, claimed that the tax cuts that you see here would drive so
I
much
mean,
economic
yeah,
growth
I know there are people
that it
that
would
still
generate
do it.
$2.6 trillion in
I'm
additional
just
revenue.
saying.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Barthold. Does the JCT believe that the growth from these tax cuts will generate $2.6 trillion in revenue?
Mr. Neal, under House rules, this legislation before you'd be considered
Right, Jen?
major
Right,
fiscal
Jen?
legislation and require us to undertake a macroeconomic analysis. We have started that, so it's probably inappropriate.
I don't think RFK believes in
prejudge the
anything
result
but the
of that
next
analysis.
pussy.
So how about
okay?
$1 trillion?
I think he's into the next
Again, I
piece of
shouldn't
pussy.
prejudge the
That's it.
result of the analysis.
That's
How
what
about
I
500
think.
billion?
Prove me wrong.
Again, I should defer and let my colleagues do their work, and we will report that. We will report
He
that.
just
to the
had a
House.
fucking
So you're pretty
relationship
good at
while
this.
he's married
Worked with
with
you for a
a
long
fucking
time.
journalist.
The effects of these tax
But apparently
changes
nobody
on the economy
cares.
are really not in
Apparently
front of
that's
us
all okay
right
now.
But there's no one I'd trust more
I mean,
about
I don't give a
cutting
shit,
the
but
edge of the
I wouldn't
research that's
fuck
done
him.
by JCT.
Oh, sorry, you're
So with
still in
that in
tanning.
mind,
I get it. It's pretty stupid. I've been
maybe
telling. I
you might
know.
be able to
It's not
name a
that she. No, I
respected
mean I
economist
tanned for years.
Other than those that are on this dais,
No, they're just going to silently
has
go away.
anybody suggested that these tax cuts being considered today would raise $2.6 trillion in revenue?
Mr. Neal, I have read news accounts from economists who have said that there would be large increases. I believe the White House's Council of Economic Advisors has. I do not recall the specific.
That's really important that they would say that, yes, okay. So let me ask you this. Have you even seen a CBO score that's done a study showing that what these deficit-financed tax cuts will actually reduce growth?
Mr. Neal, I have read the report that you're referencing. The issue is, does additional borrowing, particularly in the short term, crowd out some potential for private investment, which could diminish future growth?
So I'm assuming, Tom, that when this analysis comes in way, way, way below $2.6 trillion, our colleagues across the aisle will accuse you of having no idea what you're talking about. But let me say this. We value the honesty that has come from JCT, and the facts still matter to us. This is going to blow another massive hole in the budget debt because of the borrowing from 2017 to the $4.5 trillion that will be borrowed when they raise the debt ceiling because of this legislation. Yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Additional members have technical questions.
Ouch.
I'll recognize myself for a technical question. Mr. Barthold, I want to ask you a couple questions to make sure we all understand the scope of the no
700.
tax on overtime proposal that's within the legislation.
Or algae.
A good friend of
That's
mine
right, Jim.
in Missouri is a hardworking lineman for the electric co-op. He makes $40 an hour for an annual salary of just a little over $75,000 a year. Under this policy, is my friend eligible for the new overtime tax deduction?
Yes, sir, he would be, because the only taxpayers that would be excluded are those that were considered highly compensated as defined in the prior year. Highly compensated, I believe the threshold at present is $160,000. So your friend, the lineman, would surely qualify.
So he often has to work overtime. Last year, he worked more than 300
I think if you're at
hours of
160, you're probably
overtime.
salaried and you're not
If I
getting
have this
overtime.
right, he could claim a deduction for his premium pay, which would be $20 per hour, multiplying that by 300 hours, and you get $6,000. He could claim that $6,000 deduction in addition to the standard deduction. Mr. Barthold, do I have that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That is real tax relief for one of the hardest working people that I know in my congressional district. And there are millions and millions of workers like him across the country. Additional technical questions?
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, and Mr. Barthold, thank you. I'm grateful that Ranking Member Neal clarified the so-called official score of this bill, significantly underestimating the true cost. Just to emphasize, what is the standard window normally used in evaluating
I was guilty,
legislation?
okay?
How many years?
I'm just surprised it's still a thing.
We hew to the Congressional Budget Office's 10-year baseline, which would, the present macroeconomic baseline runs through fiscal year 2035.
And just to be clear, that's not what's done here. It's a shorter window on this.
Under the budget resolution's instructions, we're looking through fiscal year 2034.
So cutting off a full year of what this would actually cost. I think there's other real costs. It seems like my colleagues on the other side either willingly or naively are deluding themselves believing that they're doing something fiscally responsible. Part of that comes from the mind-boggling number of $2.6 trillion made up out of whole cloth. But another part of the delusion comes from the fact that so much of this bill is temporary. And we've seen this script before. In fact, we're talking about here in the 2017 bill, the Republicans put all sorts of arbitrary and artificial cliffs into the tax bill back in 2017.
Bye.
And
Have
yet
a
here we
good
are
time,
today
Oren.
pretending like those don't
Woohoo!
exist. Virtually everything that
See
either
you
had
later.
a sunset or is now being...
Documentary tonight, 6
If
p.m.
it had a sunset, it's now being
about the
extended.
garden in South Central
Tax
LA.
increases that were to go into effect on a delayed basis are now being
Trump's
turned
already
off.
ruined
The real question
Christmas.
is, why on earth would we think that the Republicans on the other side of the aisle
I
would
know,
change
Jen,
their
but that's
behavior
good for you.
at
Good
the
for
end
you to take
of
care of
these
yourself.
sunsets? Mr. Brothel,
Yes, he
let me ask you
did, and
this.
a whale.
Has JCT estimated the cost of this bill if all the provisions with artificial sunsets are indeed made permanent like they're doing to the 2017 bill?
Mr. Snyder, at present, we have not. Now, I can I can prepare and deliver to the members estimates of making permanent those provisions that
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't fuck him with
identified as
Dr. Oz's
temporary,
dick,
but we
okay?
have not
That's
worked on the
how serious it
interactions
is.
that would be involved. So each estimate would be as a standalone if you were to
Cool.
make the,
Shingles vax
exclusion
lowers
for
risk of
overtime
cardiovascular
permanent.
events by
What would that be?
23%.
If you made the exclusion for tips, what would that be? But we
Yeah,
have not
I've
worked
heard
the
that with
interaction
the
effects
shingles
of how that
vaccine, but
plays
they
in
are important.
With both of
Talk
them
to your doctor.
together, interacting with the changes in the standard deduction and the rate schedule.
Is that something?
But I can prepare, and we will deliver to all the member offices during this markup, unless the markup concludes in the next 45 minutes.
No, thank you.
That's a big study.
That information.
I'm confident it won't conclude in 45 minutes, but that would be useful because we have seen what they did last time. They're making permanent as if there was no cost. And just to be clear, if we can get those numbers on the traditional 10-year budget window, so we're seeing the normal measure.
Mr. Snyder, I don't have anything run out through 2035. Best I'll be able to do tonight.
Why not?
Is through 2034.
Well,
Why
maybe
not?
later we can look at that.
Yes, sir.
Why not?
Looking at the numbers, some of the
What's
scores
your problem?
the committee has gotten in the past on these policies, it's pretty clear that we are, or the Republicans will try to make everything permanent.
wait till you're over
And the
65,
estimate, the Committee for a Responsible Budget is saying that it will cost well over $5 trillion. Over a 30-year period, the estimate is that
And then,
these will cost
what does it mean when we renegotiate
$45 trillion
the
to our
foreign
national
debt that's
that already
held?
sits at
Bye, Oren,
$36
sweetheart. I love
trillion.
you. Bye, sister,
That is
mama.
an unfathomably large number.
Right? Like
And
what?
just to put it maybe into a context, and maybe instead of using
I just wanna
dollars,
know how
we
all
should
these
be
things work
using
together.
astronomical units.
That's
This
what
is
I
an
wanna
example.
know.
The nearest star to us, Proxima Centauri, is 25 trillion miles
How
away.
does that
You
work?
could travel to that star, but it would take 4 years traveling at the speed of light.
'Cause at
Travel
one
there
point,
and back, and you would have the size
someone said
of the debt that we will have in 30
that
years because of this bill.
You would
So in a few
that
short months,
that one of the
you know,
goals
we're-
was to
we're adding,
default on or basically
to
not
the
pay our
deficit,
debt.
We're adding to the debt.
I guess that's what we're
The
doing by doing
President's failing trade and
100-year bonds,
economic,
0 interest.
agenda has already devastated the economy.
So that's why
putting
he's not
small
worried
businesses
about it.
over a barrel, raising costs for working families. Many
think.
economists are warning of the potential for an economic downturn or an impending recession. That really should concern us all. I want to take a minute to talk about the broader impacts of
I think that they really, I'm going to stop him for a minute. I think that there is a true belief that with these tax cuts or whatever, this tax bill, that and a combination of moving to renegotiating all of our foreign held debt as part of the Mar-a-Lago Accord and then privatizing and get rid of states' rights, so that we can, I don't know, there's just like somehow these things kind of fit together. And I'm curious to know, did they or did they not put in the elimination? I mean, I guess the elimination of income tax would have been more newsworthy if they actually had put it in the 389-page document. But so I'm interested in that. I know this is a tedious, but this is, and please dip out when you need to dip out. But I feel like I just want to document this because it's getting into the nitty-gritty of what's in this bill. Oh yeah, I had it all too.
Potential recession on our economy. Mr. Barthold, in previous recessions this economy has endured, what were the impacts generally on revenues for the fisc of tax revenues?
During recessions, sir?
During recessions?
Generally, income tax receipts decline, sometimes quite substantially. Also, payroll tax receipts as unemployment rates
And they're already
increase,
proposing a
payroll
lot of
tax
decline in
receipts
the
decline.
So it's
income
really
tax.
more than just income tax, it's across the board, which should raise concerns for all of us in light of the chaos and havoc we're seeing from the president on the economy.
See, this is
it's not
why
just me
I
saying
want
this.
to.
Goldman Sachs has
How's
said
that all
it,
fit
Bank
together?
of America has said it, so many economists are predicting that we are headed towards a recession.
Mr. Snyder, your time has expired by more than 1 minute.
Well, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Smith is
Mr.
such a little
Barthold,
bitch.
Are you going to have will we have distribution tables before this hearing's over today?
Mr. Thompson, members of the committee, yes, my colleagues are trying to finalize the distribution table.
How long do you think that will take?
90 minutes?
Would you guys go to
90
Chili's
days?
last night?
90 minutes. Minutes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barthold, the bill that we're considering today, how many people will lose their health care if this bill becomes law?
I'll have to get back to you in a second after I check with my colleagues. I do have a note of some work that we have done.
13 plus million close?
If by the bill you mean the actions under the entire budget resolution,
Correct.
which involves work from the Energy and Commerce Committee, I'm not familiar with what's happening in energy and commerce and the effects of that.
The fuck's your
You know
deal?
some of the effects within the tax
Does the bill that we're
provisions
marking
we have.
up today add to our national debt?
Again, the tax provisions only, Mr. Thompson, as I responded to
What?
Mr. Neal, over the budget period, would reduce revenues by approximately $3.8 trillion in our estimation.
So a minimum of 2.8 trillion to our national debt.
3.8.
Does the bill that we're marking up today end tax on Social Security?
The legislation under reconciliation does not change any benefits or taxes paid into the trust funds for Social Security.
Thank you. So in 20,
So they're not raising the
24,
cap.
for the first time,
Max.
our interest expense exceeded our discretionary non-defense spending. In 2035, CBO projects our total defense and non-defense spending will be $2.2 trillion. $2.2 trillion. And our interest payments will be $1.7 trillion.
Okay,
That's
but
a
here's
scary
the
fiscal
Mr.
picture.
Thompson.
Mr. Barthold.
Mr.
you
Thompson, you're
reported
onto
the
something.
cost of this bill to Mr. Neal as $3.8 trillion. But we know that, as Mr. Neal and Mr. Snyder both pointed out, the real cost is more like $5.3 trillion. So that being said, I'd submit that even the $5.3 trillion number isn't the real cost because, and Mr. Barthold, tell me if I'm correct, that the cost cited in the conversation that you had didn't include any additional interest the government will have to pay to service all this new debt. Is
Okay,
that correct?
listen, I think this is
That's
it.
correct, Mr. Thompson. We do
I
not
think this is
report
one
on
of the keys.
changes in interest that will be required if the debt increases.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Barthold, why
100-year
should our
bonds,
committee or why should
zero
the American
interest,
people care about
or else
interest payments
we're not going to
on
protect
the
you,
debt?
countries.
What's the economic impact
I'm telling you right now.
of the growth of interest payments?
Well, Mr. Thompson, the growth of interest payments, as you just pointed out, they're a cost to the federal government. They potentially crowd out other items that members might think are worthy in terms of fiscal activities of the federal government. It's an increase in government outlays.
Who's going to do
which
that?
Either at some
Who's going to
point,
agree to that? That's
should be
his way to
offset
get out of
by,
that? That's his way to get
increased,
out of this?
revenues or reduced spending, a combination of both.
Who's going to agree to that?
Thank you. So make no mistake about it, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. What the committee is dealing with here is a deficit finance tax cut, which will cause soaring interest payments. This is a fiscal tenuous moment for our country. Our debt and our deficits are soaring, and our interest payments will as well. Without a doubt, crowd out any growth aspects you might hope to receive from this tax bill. We could have gone a different way here today. We could have worked together to protect 98% of Americans who earn under $400,000 a year. We could have ensured that they wouldn't receive a tax increase and work together for a responsible way to pay for the cost of that smaller bill. Instead, we're maxing out our credit card, passing the debt on to future generations, and then also applying for 3 more. This is the height of irresponsibility, and I can only hope we don't pay for this in the credit markets.
And total
although,
foreign holding of debt as of the end of 2024 was 30%. 30% of our
Thank you, Mr.
debt
Chairman. I'm
is
sure my
held
friend
by
and
foreign nations.
colleague, Mr. Thompson, would like to know what the interest rates in terms of U.S.
So where are they going to get
Treasuries
the money?
have increased over the last
Where are they going to get the
4
money?
years since President Biden was in office. Mr. Barthel, do you know what those
Jody
what our
Arrington, go fuck
payments
your mother.
on our debt was when President Biden took office?
Who gives a
Mr.
shit?
Arrington, I'm afraid I don't have.
Just roughly $300 billion.
No, because
ring
nobody
bell
gives a
sound,
shit, Jody.
Relatively close.
You guys won,
again, Mr.
okay?
Arrington,
It's
It was
done.
around $300 billion. Do you know what it is? Do you know what it was when President Trump took over after 4 years of 40-year high inflation after a record spending spree? Do you know what those payments are today? It's
know
almost $1 trillion, just to kind of cut to the chase. So we're talking about triple the interest payments because of the policies of the previous administration. So we'll see what we as Republicans with unified Republican leadership can do about that. But so far, the prices have come down. The recent inflation reports, do you know,
Stop
Mr. Barthel,
it.
what those are? Are they
It
going
came
up or
down
in terms of
0.1%, and
Core
everyone's
inflation.
like, well,
Core inflation has
Don't hold
has
my beer.
moderated, is still slightly above.
moderated
its
in
target
terms of
2%.
it's slightly going down?
Oh,
It's
shut up.
coming down
Yeah,
closer.
in 100 days, that's pretty remarkable to me.
oh my God, this
Core
is so
output, Is
stupid.
core output going up or down? in
This
terms of
is so
economic output?
stupid.
The gross domestic product has continued to grow in real terms, sir.
It continues, so we're growing
Right.
that.
Is it gonna,
And,
when we have these
do you know
tariffs
about the
finally settle
job
in, honey?
participation rates? For the last 4 years.
How dare
under
you.
The Biden administration, they've been below what we
Wait,
had
where is it?
pre-COVID.
Where
Are
am
they
I?
going up in terms of people going back to the workforce or going down?
I
No, he's
honestly do
he's
not,
he's
know the
he's
current,
picking
labor
things
force
out of his
situation.
They're
ass.
slightly
No, fuck him.
up and improving. We're talking about 100
Yeah,
days
Mr.
into
Bartold.
this
Mr.
new
Bartold should be
administration.
embarrassed.
My friend and ranking member made mention of the growth rate assumptions, suggesting that they, I think fairly
Growth rate
suggesting
assumptions? No,
that
it's
they
the
were not,
economists reporting,
now, I hope
shithead.
this is fair to say and to characterize, suggesting that they were.
When the gentleman finishes, I'll say we're
Yeah,
not
that,
there.
that, that, that they were not based in any rationale of accomplishment in any recent historic terms. 50 years. What's
No,
the
no, no,
average
no,
of
baby.
50-year
No,
GDP
baby.
growth in this country? Do you know what it was, the average annual growth rate in this country over the last 50 years or 30 years?
Historically, there's a break in post-World War II growth noted about around 1973 to 1975, at the time of the oil crisis and stagflation.
So the average is
so
3%.
It's lower. I was going to say it's lower now than it was from 1945 to 1972.
Yeah, so it's 3% roughly. And there were a couple of decades where we had over 4%. Do you know what the annual average growth rate was for this country and our economy under President Biden, controlling for the first year $2 trillion, sort of flooding the market with spending. So do you know what the last 3 years were, annual average growth rate for President Biden?
I don't have those figures.
It was
at my fingertips.
2.7%. Do you know what the
God,
growth
man.
rate,
Okay,
annual
Jody.
average growth rate of
Get
President
your rocks
Trump
off
was
now.
before COVID?
You're wrong.
Again, I don't have those figures.
It was
before.
2.8%. Do you know what the assumption was of the Budget Committee in terms of the annual average growth rate for the purposes of budget reconciliation? 2.6%. So we are actually more conservative than both President Biden or the growth rate under President Biden and under President Trump. Remarkable, isn't it? So do you know, last question about growth rates. Do you know what the growth rate increase was from when President Trump took over, when it was at 1.8%, and just prior to COVID under President Trump and unified Republican leadership? Do you know what that delta was in terms of growth?
Again, Mr. Arrington, I don't have those figures here at the table.
It was 1%, which was the 2.8 on average. Ours was 2.6. If we'd have maintained 1%, we would have had $3 trillion in additional revenue. Did we have record corporate revenue after TCJA for the following year or two?
This is a total
Yes,
cherry pick
yes, sir,
of
we did.
data points.
Record revenue,
Oh my God.
record low unemployment, and record low
hate
poverty rates,
you.
record
hate
investment,
you,
record
darling.
repatriation, record job growth, 1% GDP growth,
Gentleman
and an
yield.
annual average of 2%. I'm just,
Will the gentleman yield?
The
Yes, I
gentleman's
do.
time's
Yeah.
expired, but I'll call on you next.
thank you. My time's expired.
Thank you.
Fucking idiot.
Thank you. Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Chairman. So what the gentleman has suggested, record this, record that, no. None of what he has suggested comes close to what was produced during the Clinton administration. None of it. Record growth, 4 balanced budgets, poverty down.
I guess he has no. Yeah, he probably
revenue
doesn't have a
through the
choice, but
roof.
I don't know.
So that's simply a misstatement of fact. I yield my time back.
Mr. Horsford.
Yeah, bring back fart.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Mr. Bartold, is there anything in the current no tax on tips section that would stop a related party, like a family member, from calling a $20,000 gift payment a tip just to get the tax break?
Mr. Horsford, the legislation does have several guidelines. One, tips generally have to be qualified, have to be reported by an employer on a wage statement, a W-2. Also, tips are only qualified tips if they're in industries in which tipping has been historically customary. So, for example, a hospitality
Oh my God.
industry. So just
So now
any,
you're just going to
any
open a
employee
restaurant as a front
could not readily claim that some
and be the employer. Oh my God. I
Thank you,
can't.
Mr.
I can't
Bartold,
with
and
this
I do know,
life anymore.
that there are a number of necessary guardrails to ensure tips are not used as a loophole. And while I'm glad to see that the no tax on tips is in the bill, albeit temporarily, I would ask that my Republican colleagues join me to prevent tips from being used as a loophole. And so we'll be coming back to that later. Mr. Bartold, my concern overall is that this bill benefits the wealthiest. Millionaires are getting a tax cut while those earning under $50,000 per year are getting just pennies. Meaning the people of Beatty, Nevada, in the rural part of my district, whose median income is $24,000, are getting pennies while billionaires are getting gold bars. But I think there's even more to this story than that. Mr. Bartold, can you briefly describe for the committee what this bill does to the estate tax?
Under the legislation before you, Mr. Horsford, it increases the exemption amount to $15 million effective for gifts and estates for bequests in 2026, and it indexes that $15 million amount. That's an increase relative to present law. For 2025, the estate and gift tax exemption amount is $13.99 million, just under $14 million. It also is indexed. If it were extended with indexing, it would be somewhere in the $14 million range for 2026. So it's an incremental increase beyond simple extension of what was enacted in the 2017 legislation.
So,
Unless inflation goes up.
The 2017 legislation, I'd have to look up. I don't recall offhand, but our estimate for the effect of the legislation that's before you is $211 billion over the period 2025.
I didn't even think about that. It's going to fuck everybody's Social Security.
Estate tax outlined here reflected.
Yeah,
in
I think
those,
that's one of the points is that the
tables?
revenue that is lost from this bill is actually very
this is a real
short-sighted.
wonky, answer. It's a tax on a stock, a transfer of wealth, and everything else that we're looking at is really looking
Because
at
there's no
flows,
pay for
be
it.
a
There's
flow
no
of
paying
income
for
or a
it.
flow of consumption.
It's a
If it was an
deficit
excise
budget.
tax, it's not really cricket to weave the two together.
Think about that.
That's a long answer to say the answer.
It's not
to
a
your question
break-even
is
budget.
no.
It's a
Changes
deficit
to the estate
budget.
tax will not be reflected in the distribution tables that I'll be making available later in the day.
Thank you. So these aren't in the distribution tables, but the benefits certainly go to well-off individuals. Let me ask you this, Mr. Bartold. For 2022, the last year for which you have data, how many people paid the estate tax who had an estate of over $100 million?
I'll have to respond later to you on that. I know that we've done some analysis
I believe
on
it's
that.
approximately 200.
I will respond to all the members of the committee and give them a figure.
Doesn't this bill give those $100 million plus estates, doesn't this bill give those estates tax benefits of millions of dollars?
Absent this legislation, the estate tax exemption would fall substantially. So yes, it would provide an additional exempt amount for all large estates and more modest estates as well.
So thank you. So clearly the estate and gift tax provisions benefit very wealthy taxpayers. Isn't it fair to say the JCT data underestimate just how much this bill benefits wealthy taxpayers then?
Again, as I explained why we don't distribute the effects, but it does not reflect the effect of transfers of wealth. That's correct, sir.
So let's then turn to the other side of the distribution tables then, the lowest end of the income scale. Mr. Bartold, there are other committees that are also have instruction around the reconciliation process. And one of those committees, the Energy and Commerce Committee, has an instruction to raise $880 billion. How are they going about doing that?
Mr. Barthold, I'll let you respond to this, but we're a minute over, and I just let him respond, and then your time has expired.
Mr. Horsford, I'm really not up to speed on what's going on in the other committees. This
And
committee's
not
been keeping us fairly busy.
informative one.
Well, they're Medicaid cuts. It's the largest cut to health care in the history of the country. That's what's happening in the other committee. The exact same time, this committee is marking up the biggest tax cut for billionaires. I yield my time.
That's right,
There
they
was
are
nothing
meeting,
to
aren't
yield,
they?
Mr. Doggett.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barthold, I just want to be sure that it's clear the enormity of what's at stake here today. Now, you've indicated, I believe, that the tax cuts you estimate at $3.8 trillion. Is that correct?
That's correct, as reported on JCX 22R.
If they're made permanent, it's $1.4 trillion more.
Have not made that estimate. I will be getting supplemental
Committee for a
information out to you.
Responsible Federal Budget has, and of course, that's not even considering interest. We had over $1 trillion in interest payments this past year, more than defense. And we're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars there. And just to understand how big that figure is, it's about, if you make these tax cuts permanent, it's about twice the size of the entire Social Security Trust Fund. That's what's at stake. It's more than the entire gross domestic product of Germany, the strongest country in Europe. Now let's talk about the enormity of the harm that is being done to people on their health care. Is it correct, Mr. Barthold, that this legislation fails to extend the enhanced tax credits that lower the cost of insurance for millions of Americans who purchase their own coverage through the marketplace?
That's correct.
And when the
Mr.
Republicans permit these credits to expire in a mere 7 months, what is the effect on health insurance premiums for those individuals that rely on the marketplace today?
Work that our staff has done in conjunction with the Congressional Budget Office suggests that the premiums will increase for individuals, sir.
Yes, sir. They go up about almost 8%, I believe is the specific calculation that you did. And is it true that this failure on the part of Republicans will raise premiums not just for those, not that they'll raise them really for nearly everyone in the marketplace, not just for those who receive the subsidies?
That's correct. That's part of the analysis.
If my understanding is correct, failure to extend this policy will result in an increase in the number of uninsured Americans. Is that right?
That's correct, sir. That's
yes, sir. And I've received data. In fact, Mr.
There's a
Chairman,
link to
I'd
the.
ask unanimous consent to
There's a
include
link
this
to the
letter,
meeting that he referenced
from
that's happening
CBO
now.
saying that 4.2
So
million Americans
they were both
will
happening at the
lose
same
their
time.
coverage in 7 months if you are successful with this bill.
Is it germane?
Well, I guess that's the question. And germaneness, Mr. Chairman, goes to another question I have for Mr. Barthold, because Mr. Barthold tells us he cannot tell us the macroeconomic effects today, cannot tell us who gets what out of this bill. We think it's mostly billionaires, but who gets what? Because, Mr. Barthold, you only got
It certainly is millionaires.
this full bill within the last 24
And half
hours or so
millionaire.
yourself, didn't you?
well, Mr. Doggett, I think you know that we do work with the
I'm
chairman
sure-
and as they develop policies.
Yes.
But yes, the
I'm
final
sure
legislation
you didn't
was
have the
yesterday.
final bill till yesterday, and that's one of the other reasons it's so important to comply with all the rules of the House rather than to break them as has occurred today.
Yep.
Now, let me ask you also about another entirely different section of the bill concerning the energy ITC and PTC provisions, these investment credits that have been so important. If I understand it, over the past 15 years, when clean energy production and investment credits were being guaranteed so that someone could begin construction, that you consider the year facilities are placed in service, not the year that the construction began. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
And with all the unpredictability of Trump's up and down tariff taxes, the supply chain difficulties, and the natural disasters that are made worse by climate change, all this chaos, no project developer worth his salt can actually guarantee when their facility will be placed in service, can they?
there is more substantial uncertainty.
Under
Yes, sir.
current law, if a taxpayer started construction, say, on an offshore wind facility on January 1st of this year and maintained continuous construction, would they be eligible to claim the credits if their facility was placed in service in 2032?
Yes, sir, under the begin construction rule.
And if the proposal today was amended to maintain the 15-year precedent, these credits are based on when the construction begins, but Republicans still chose to phase the credit out, say, in 2028, would the taxpayer still be eligible? Yes.
No, sir, not if it's phased out.
Well, wouldn't it be based, if you maintain it the way it is?
Oh, under
today,
begin
they would
begin
be
construction. Yes, that's
Instead,
correct,
under
sir.
the text before us today, the value of the credit they'll be entitled to by changing that is zero, right?
Yes, sir.
They get no benefit. We reject a 15-year way of handling these important facilities, many of which may already be under construction. They're doing their due diligence. They're proceeding with their construction on a continuous basis. But suddenly, this bill will wipe them out. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and I recognize Mr. Miller for 5 minutes. Mr. Miller is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. My friends across the aisle appear to be opposing tax cuts for all Americans just to spite President Trump. But, Mr. Bartold, is it true that doubling the standard deduction in 2017 helped simplify the tax code and lower taxes for millions of Americans?
Mr. Moore, the increase in standard deduction
I'm going to turn Mr. Moore down because nobody needs to hear that bullshit. Okay, let me tell you this. Can you see this? So this is the GDP now.
Many people consider that as
updated May 8th, so a bit ago. Next release date is this Thursday, the 15th. So right now, let's see, Q1 to 2025, it was the GDP was negative 2.73. Looks like for Q2 they're forecasting, because let's see, October, November, December, January, February, March. Right, so January, February, March, they are forecasting a positive GDP of 2.25, 2.26.
Thank you. And for what we have within this bill,
That's the Fed.
We added for a year of inflation. Is that correct? With
I
the standard
imagine.
deduction?
The standard
so
deduction,
we'll
the
see.
rate bracket points, a couple other provisions.
What is
modified the
happening
inflation
to
adjustment,
us?
effectively giving an extra year of inflation in the calculation, increasing those values.
Thank you. So we accounted for inflation and added it for an extra year. I appreciate that. So essentially, we have
Added for an extra year? What does that even mean?
1,000 to 2,000 starting.
What
in
is your
2025.
tie? I wish I had a green screen. I'd do
Well,
it on your tie.
Inflation is calculated year over year. It's just that you're getting an extra year's boost from the relative to that base.
Thank you. So
He
it's
doesn't
still
know what he's
1,000 to
talking
2,000.
about.
So the answer is yes.
Miller
this
doesn't
is incredibly
know.
helpful for our constituency. As
He's
the
drinking
vast
Nestle
majority of the
Quick.
country uses standard deduction.
Oh my
The
God.
Ohio 7th
You
Congressional
guys,
District,
you guys, that's a
93%
Nestle Quick.
of my constituents use
That's a
standard
Nestle
deduction.
Quick.
So if this were not to continue,
That's a Nestle
93%
Quick.
of my constituents would be hurt by this expiration. Is that
He's
correct?
literally drinking a Nestle's Quick.
93% would have a smaller standard deduction. Not everybody necessarily has lower, would have an increase in taxes because of the other provisions that would be expiring. But yes, a substantial number of people would lose the benefit of the higher standard deduction.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentleman
did
yields
it.
back. I now recognize Ms. Sanchez for 5 minutes. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Delbene. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bartold. I wanted to talk to you about the child tax credit. You likely recall the changes Democrats made to the child tax credit as part of the American Rescue Plan. Back then, we increased the value of the child tax credit to $3,000 per year and $3,600 per year for young children. Mr. Bartold, is that number, those numbers, higher or lower than what is proposed by Republicans in this legislation?
This legislation for a temporary
That true,
period would have a
Jim?
child
My
tax credit
God.
at $2,500, so lower
It's
than.
lower. And Democrats also ensured by making the credit fully refundable that the full credit went to all taxpayers, especially the ones with the lowest incomes, the families that arguably need the credit the most. Mr. Bartold, does this Republican bill ensure that children in the poorest families receive the same assistance as children in families that make $400,000 a year?
No, Ms. Delbene, there is a phase-in of the credit which is based on earned income. So it's limited by, the refundability is limited by the amount of the household's earned income.
Thank you. So no, under this bill, a family making $400,000 per year gets $2,500 per child, but a struggling family where maybe there was a job loss or even a family when both parents are working full-time earning minimum wage but are still scraping to get by, they just get a fraction of that. Mr. Bartold, does JCT know how many low-income children won't receive the full value of the $2,500.
Shouldn't it be the inverse?
The $2,500 credit under the Republican
You
bill?
get less the more you make? What?
I think I can provide the committee with an estimate of that. I don't have that at my fingertips. But
I get it's an earned income
I will
credit,
get an
but for
estimate to
fuck's
the committee.
And it's true that
we be
some
human?
children, even if they have social security numbers, may not get access to the credit.
Again, for the point that you raised, Ms. Del Bene, because there's a limitation on refundability based on the earned income of the household. There can be some households where there's not full refundability.
Lastly,
okay.
the
All
American
right,
Rescue Plan
Bartold.
ensured that taxpayers would get delivery of the child tax credit on a monthly basis to ensure that funds were available to meet families' monthly needs. Does this bill do that?
It does not provide for monthly refundability, no.
And also under this bill, if a family has a baby on January 1st, does that family receive the child tax credit before the child turns 1 year old?
No.
But
and if a colleague did just pass me the information that they have on number of children with Social Security numbers who would not receive the full value of the $2,500 child tax credit, and our estimate of that for tax year 2026, so next year, would be approximately 17 million children.
Thank you. Astounding number. And then if a family had a baby in November, would they receive the child tax credit before the child turns 1 year old?
Yes.
So inconsistency depending on the time of the year, also in the legislation Republicans are proposing. So it certainly seems like the child tax credit in this bill is woefully inadequate, does not reach all the children and their families who have needs, and does not prioritize children and families who need it the most. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Bene,
Mr.
would
Chair.
you yield?
I yield to Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. Mr. Barthold, my friend from Texas has made the point that middle-class folks are going to get something out of this and got something out of the last bill. Isn't it true that this committee can write a tax bill that benefits people in that proverbial middle class, people who make less than $400,000, without having at the same time to give a huge tax cut to the richest people in the country?
Don't get me involved in your bullshit.
Mr. Thompson, the members have often
That's what I would
chosen,
say.
To limit
Can we do that?
benefits.
Keep me out of your shit.
Can we write a tax bill that targets the middle-class people?
Of course, you can design policy to target as the members choose.
Without a big giveaway to the richest people who don't
What are
need the help
you
right
even
now.
talking about?
As I said, decisions for the members to make, sir.
Thank you. I yield back.
What the hell?
Gentleman yields back, and I recognize Ms. Sanchez for 5 minutes.
My God.
Thank you, Mr. Barthold. The title of Part 2 is Removing Taxpayer Benefits for Illegal Immigrants. But I think that title does not match the actual language of the bill. Mr. Barthold, my understanding is that these
Right,
sections
Lee?
make changes
I mean, yeah, let's
to
start
whether
there.
lawfully present individuals can access premium tax credits. Is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Sanchez, that's correct.
So we are talking about lawfully present individuals.
Yes, Ms. Sanchez.
So lawfully present individuals are not illegal immigrants, are they?
No, they're lawfully present.
Okay, so the title, Removing Taxpayer Benefits for Illegal Immigrants, is actually false, patently. Yes?
Well, I didn't make
It's
the title.
inconsistent. Is it inconsistent?
I think you established that under the legislation, there could be some lawfully present individuals who are denied.
Do these sections make changes to illegal immigrants' eligibility? Are any of the categories of immigrants covered in this section those that are illegally in the United States?
Those such individuals already are not eligible, Ms. Sanchez.
Correct. Illegal immigrants are
really?
not eligible, but I'm asking whether or not the sections in the text of the bill that we are marking up today make any changes to illegal immigrants' eligibility.
No, they do
No,
not.
they do not. Are any of the categories of immigrants covered in this section those that are illegally in the United States?
No.
No. So the title is patently false and misleading. Do these legally present individuals pay taxes, generally speaking?
The lawful residents present in the United States can have jobs. They may pay payroll taxes. They may pay income taxes.
So generally speaking, if they're in the country legally and they're working, they generally pay taxes.
There will be some. There will certainly be some taxes paid. Yes.
Okay. So the title of Part 2, Removing Taxpayer Benefits for Illegal Immigrants, is patently false. It's misleading. But this section, nevertheless, is removing benefits for legally present individuals. And I would note that a similar change is made with respect to Medicare, again, pertaining to legally, lawfully present individuals. Is that correct?
I don't know about the Medicare piece, Ms. Sanchez, but yes, related to the provisions here in the Internal Revenue Code.
Okay, so they're saying they're taking away these benefits from illegal immigrants, but this section solely deals with lawfully present people who are paying taxes into the system and now are going to be denied those benefits. Really great work, guys. Mr. Barthold, can you describe the rules that the Republicans placed on the child tax credit related to identification requirements when they enacted their bill in 2017?
Pardon the delay. And the 2017 legislation provided that the child had to have a Social Security number.
The child had to have a social, so proving that the child is in fact a citizen. Can you explain the rule that has been added to this bill in contrast to that bill?
Both the child and the taxpayer and taxpayer's spouse have to have Social Security numbers.
So under this rule that's in the text of the bill today, a child with a Social Security number, a citizen of the United States, is going to be denied the vital support of the child tax credit that the child tax credit provides if one of the parents doesn't have a Social Security number.
That's possible, Ms. Sanchez, yes.
Okay, can the GCT, I don't think that's possible. I think that's the whole purpose.
That's by design.
Of this section of the bill is to penalize these children even though they're United States citizens. Can JCT provide this committee with a number of the citizen children that will be denied the child tax credit as a result of this provision?
Yes, but it'll probably take me a couple of minutes to find it.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
I'll let
do
you
it.
do that calculation, but I just want to make this last point in closing.
Okay.
In the 2017
Well, I
tax
want the
bill, we were
calculation.
told many things about how great that bill was, and we were sold on the many benefits I might add that never materialized. One of which was that it was going to be so easy that people were going to be able to file their income tax on a postcard. Mr. Barthold, do people file their income taxes on a postcard?
Ms. Sanchez, no to the postcard.
PayPal co-founder
No
Peter
to
Thiel.
postcard.
And my colleague did provide an estimate that we have developed in answer to your question. And we estimate, again, looking ahead a year, 2026, we estimate that approximately 2 million children with Social Security numbers will be denied the child tax.
2 million
Generally, this
kids
time
who
has
are
expired.
citizens of this country are going to be
My colleague's time
denied
has
the
expired.
child tax credit. And I would just say this bill is more inflated promises, but
My
the
colleague's
reality,
time
it's
has
pain for
expired.
American families and it's gain for millionaires.
My
And with that, I
colleague's
yield
time
back.
has expired. I now recognize Mr. Yakum for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barthold, my colleague on the other side of the aisle just described the child tax credit provisions under the American Rescue Plan Act. How long were those provisions in effect for?
Just 1 year, I was thinking.
1 year.
1 year.
So what you're saying is that when Democrats held the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they had the opportunity to make those provisions more generous and potentially even make them permanent, they chose to allow them to expire after 1 year. Is that correct?
1 year. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize Mr. Davis for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bartha, one of the primary anti-poverty tools that we have in this country is through the Earned Income Tax Credit, which lifts nearly 6 million people above the poverty line every year. In 2021, Ways and Means Democrats led the charge to strengthen the Earned Income Tax Credit by significantly expanding the credit for taxpayers without dependents. This assured that workers were not being taxed into poverty by the federal government. So, Mr. Bartha, let me ask you this question. Other than for a narrow group of Purple Heart recipients who also earn SSDI, does the bill before us today make any changes to the Earned Income Tax Credit to better help single workers, younger workers, older workers, foster youth, or homeless youth?
Mr. Davis, the legislation before you does not specifically address any of the categories of workers that you mentioned. It establishes in Section 112206 a certification program for establishing a child's status as a qualifying child of the taxpayer. As you noted, it does make change for Purple Heart recipients, but it does not directly address specific categories of workers.
Thank you very much. And let me ask, am I correct, or correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the 2017 Republican tax bill change the way in which we adjusted for inflation, causing the growth in the Earned Income Tax Credit to slow down?
The 2017 legislation changed for almost all purposes in the individual income tax inflation adjustments. That was rate brackets, standard deduction, and as you note, the Earned Income Tax Credit. It went from the regular CPI to what is referred to as the changed CPI. The changed CPI generally grows at a slower rate than the regular CPI. So the short answer is yes, the result is that the parameters defining the Earned Income Tax Credit grew more
they
slowly,
opted for the
as
less
did the
amount.
parameters for the values of the standard deduction and the rate brackets.
So, as a result of this TCJA, have there been fewer Earned Income Tax Credit payments to low-income workers than if the TCJA never passed?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
By roughly how much?
Okay, we've looked at some research on this in 2021 and 2022. The estimated difference in the effect due to the indexing using regular the old CPI versus the changed CPI, it was about $1.5 to $2 billion in aggregate.
Oh, wow.
So,
Average
while
of
my
what?
Republican colleagues seem intent on showering their wealthy
Wow.
donors with tax cuts, they're doing nothing for the vast majority of our poorest workers, even while the poorest continue to feel the consequences.
Wait till you hear about the
from their
corporate tax
original
rate.
deal.
I don't know which committee
Similarly,
talks
I'd
about
like to
that.
ask you about child
If it's
care.
this one or someone
As
else.
you know, Ways and Means Democrats significantly expanded the Child Independent Care Credit in the American Rescue Plan and made the credit refundable so all families could benefit from it. So, Mr. Bartha, as child care prices skyrocket, does this bill before us today do anything to increase the Child Independent Care Credit?
Mr. Davis, this legislation does not address the Child Independent Care Credit.
And so the priorities reflected in this bill are truly disappointing. Whereas Democrats put supporting the neediest and supporting working families at the top of our priority list, my Republican colleagues are ignoring these struggles while showering those at the top with tax cuts once again. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and now recognize Mr. Larson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Barthold, for, Mr. Barthold, how long have you been doing this?
Actually, 2 days from today will mark my 16th anniversary as the Chief of Staff of the Joint Committee on Taxation.
And I think you can tell from the applause the enormous respect that people have for your job. When did you receive this bill that we're asking you all these questions on, the full bill?
The final completed version of the bill was delivered to us when it was delivered to you yesterday afternoon. Now, to be fair, and as you know from your experience, we work closely with all the members. We work closely with the chairman and his staff. So we were aware of many of the
understandable, but I wanted for the viewing audience to know that when you actually receive this and are supposed to answer all these questions. I have some technical questions that I wanted to ask you, especially was interested in what you were saying, how in a bill sometimes things can get crowded out by the changes that occur from a 28-page to over 400. But how many, because initially we had heard about this Social Security tax on income and that it was going to be eliminated altogether, but how many individuals will still be subject to tax on Social Security income after accounting for what's now called the senior deduction in this proposal?
Well, let's see. Under present law for 2026, we estimate that there will be about 56 million tax filing units with Social Security benefits. 32 million have Social Security benefits in their adjusted gross income because there is the exclusion for a number of taxpayers. And about 27 million have Social Security benefits in AGI and owe some individual income tax. Under the proposal for 2026, about 25 million tax returns are estimated to have Social Security benefits included in AGI and owe any income tax. Now, that's in part because they have other income. About 24 million tax returns will have Social Security benefits included in AGI that exceed the $4,000 additional seniors deduction and also will owe some individual income.
So essentially, this bill doesn't do as President Trump promised to eliminate taxes on Social Security because some seniors will receive no benefit or less than full benefits from the additional senior deduction from this bill. Believe it or not,
It's
Mr.
3
Chairman, we
years.
do
It's
have
a deduction of
solution for that.
$4,000 per eligible filer with an income that does not exceed 75 for single filers, 150 for married,
Barthold,
and it expires in
at what
2028.
income amount does someone stop paying FICA contributions to Social Security?
For the
Raise the cap.
present year, it's $176,100.
Thank you. And so someone who's making, let's say, 2.5, I won't go to the 500 billion that our favorite person, Mr. Musk, is getting, but 2.5 million in annual wages, will they pay FICA throughout the year?
FICA is collected until you reach the maximum. So
Wow,
that
imagine
substantial
what would
rate of pay, no, you
happen
do
if
not,
we were able to
pay
raise the
So
cap.
in the case of Mr. Musk, who receives a compensation package of more than $50 billion from Telsa, but has
Tesla.
never received the salaried income,
know.
how
He
much
might have
would a person who makes millions or billions in compensation through stocks contribute to Social Security each year?
Tax wealth, not income.
capital gain income, return on equity grants are not wages subject to FICA. There are certain stock compensation that is subject to FICA, and I'm not specifically familiar with Mr. Musk's
Is there anything in this legislation that would increase the amount of those making over $400,000 to contribute to Social Security or its solvency?
No, sir, there's nothing that would increase contributions.
So this bill raises the debt by over $4 trillion, yet
Gentleman's time has expired.
nothing to improve the Social Security benefits.
Gentleman's time
Wow,
has expired.
that would
I
solve
now
a lot of
recognize Ms. Chu
problems
for 5
and
minutes.
probably spread out the impact amongst a wide
Bartold.
group.
Not only does this legislation appear to cut trillions of dollars in taxes, but it appears to do nothing to address Trump's mass firings at the IRS or address the cuts to the IRS. Does funding to the IRS result in higher or lower revenue for the federal government?
Ms. Chu, the funding of the IRS, just to be precise, the analysis that's carried out by our colleagues at the Congressional Budget Office. The Congressional Budget Office did, as part of the analysis for the reconciliation legislation in 2022, estimate that increased expenditures in different areas of the IRS, such as modernization, customer service, other different aspects, would have an effect of increasing collections by the IRS in excess of the investments in human and IT resources that would be necessary.
Thank you. And if this legislation were to be enacted,
Well,
will this
I think
increase the federal budget
I wouldn't
deficit?
raise the level of
Again,
benefits.
drawing only on what the Joint Committee staff
wouldn't.
has reported in JCX 22.
You'd be subsidizing. You could pay
Tax
less
provisions. The tax provisions
after
as we
170,000
conventionally
or whatever
estimate them prior to macroeconomic
as a
analysis
deduction from your
would
payroll
increase the
deduction.
deficit by $3.8
But
trillion over the budget
you're
period
paying it forward.
fiscal 2025 through 2034.
Yes, so it will increase the budget
I know.
deficit by $3.8
Mind
trillion, is what you just said.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you confirm that not only will this bill
Hi,
slash
Tisla.
taxes for the wealthiest people in the country, but it will also make it easier for the same people to avoid paying the taxes they do owe because the IRS's ability to audit those returns and address this law breaking has
Yeah, I
been
am
greatly
that.
diminished by President
Although
Trump
I'm not
and
sad
his
about that.
administration.
Well, Ms. Chu, again, I have to rely on the colleagues at the Congressional Budget Office to opine on effects in terms of
Less ideologically
expenditures and
pure.
allocation of resources within the
I don't know
within
what
the
that all
IRS.
means.
And I believe we're just in the
I
process
don't
of
care
making
about rich
available
people.
our distribution analysis on this legislation. Member offices should be getting it, and you should be getting it at the dais soon. So I can't really comment on the first
But
part
isn't
of your
it
question
already
about,
because your
the
wages
distribution of the tax
are what's
benefits on this
driving what your benefit is?
Well, if this
so
bill
isn't it
is
already
enacted,
means tested in
will this
some
bill
ways?
compound the fact that
Like if
the
you're
budget
lucky enough to
deficit
make
would
a
be
lot of
made
money,
considerably worse
then
at
your
a time when it is
payout
already
is more. You know what?
rising
I don't
and
know.
threatening
I get what you're
long-term
saying.
solvency of programs like Social Security and Medicare.
Well, just to repeat, in terms
I
of the
guess I'm looking for a little
analysis of
redistribution of
the
wealth
tax
kind of thing.
provisions, setting aside what might be happening in terms of reduction
Oh,
in,
be safe,
in
peace, love.
spending,
I'm glad you're here.
or other or potential offsetting receipts, the tax provisions would contribute to a higher deficit. I do not know the total effect.
And how are we going to
of
service
what
that
would be reported
deficit?
under the
Where's that
budget.
money coming from? Wait a
But
minute.
it will result in a higher deficit. I would like to repeat that. And will anything in this bill improve the solvency of Social Security and Medicare and strengthen those programs to ensure that Americans who paid into them for their entire lives can count on receiving their benefits when they reach retirement age?
This legislation makes no changes to Social Security.
Oh,
Thank you.
right.
This clarifies
beautiful
quite a bit about the bill,
tariffs.
which would not only cut taxes for the ultra-wealthy, but also give wealthy tax cheats the knowledge that they can break the law without consequences because our tax law enforcement
get it.
has
I
been
get it,
defunded
Max.
by the Trump administration. And
it
together,
wrong for me
these
not to care
decisions will
about that?
worsen the budget deficit and do nothing to protect Social Security and Medicare.
Like I would have been
which are
willing to give
under
like a lower
attack.
percentage, right?
And
But
I'd
think of
also
what just
like
a
to ask you about something that
fraction
thousands
could
of my
do.
constituents have been calling.
No,
and
I know,
writing
you're
to me
totally-
about
I
since the
totally
start of this
understand. You're
administration,
explaining what-
which is President Trump's
what is real.
decision to
The
let
real
Elon
dilemma.
Musk, an unconfirmed, unelected
I do
billionaire,
appreciate it.
into the government's most sensitive systems, including the IRS records. Now, these are the most private and sensitive taxpayer information
Lee, I'm
for our
sorry.
constituents. It's how
So is
the
Peace
government
Love. She's not in
pays
traffic,
Social
but she's on the road,
Security
too.
benefits. And so, Mr. Barthold, is there any provision here to keep Doge employees out of the Treasury payment system that includes taxpayer information, which is required to be confidential by law?
The gentlewoman's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Sewell.
Wait,
for
whoa,
5
let him answer the question,
Mr. Chairman.
bitch.
Mr. Bartol, my question is regarding Section 25F and pertains to the qualified elementary and secondary education scholarships that are found on page 57 in the amendment in the nature of a substitute. Can you elaborate on the tax benefits that donors to private school voucher programs would receive from this measure? And is it possible for taxpayers to receive more than $1 benefit from taxpayers if they donate a dollar?
Ms. Sewell, the way this provision works is the proposal creates a non-refundable income tax credit that's equal to the aggregate amount of qualified contributions made by the taxpayer.
So 1 to 1.
One to
So if
one.
I give $1, I get $1 tax credit. Is that right?
The credit allowed cannot exceed the greater of 10% of the taxpayer's aggregate gross income. But yes, give $1, you get a credit for $1.
Now, could the taxpayer also receive a credit from the state on that same dollar that they donated?
The legislation does not bind state law in any way, so I guess that would be possible, Ms. Sewell.
So it's possible that that you could give $1 to these scholarship funds and get a dollar credit.
Actually, let me correct that. The legislation does try to provide that credit allowed to the taxpayer would be reduced by the amount that's allowed on a state tax return. So it's not.
So what about a deduction? Can you get a deduction, a state deduction for that same dollar?
Yes.
You can. So basically, a person can give $1 and get the benefit of more than $1 on their taxes if you combine both federal and state. What is the income amount for qualified students to receive these scholarships? Can a student whose parent makes over $100,000 receive one of these scholarships?
There are no restrictions on the students of these schools.
So I guess what I'm asking is, so the student's parent can make over $100,000 and they can still get a scholarship from the scholarship fund?
Yes.
So basically, you can give $1 to a scholarship fund, and then those people, the students who receive that scholarship, parents can have an income of unlimited amounts of money. Is that right?
Yes, as you've laid out the possibility.
So is there a provision within the tax code that would require that teachers at any of the private academies receiving these vouchers be certified or accredited?
Not aware of a code section.
There's
that
not.
does that.
Is there a provision in the tax code that requires these private schools to provide special education or to educate disabled students like you have to do in public high schools?
Holy
public
shit.
schools.
Generally, again, no requirement.
I pinned the bill
does
to
the
the top.
contribution to churches get
I
the
highly
same
encourage
kind of
you to
tax
open it
treatment
up
as
and
this program
search
described in this bill?
these terms that are coming up, like scholarship.
Well,
Highly
a donation
suggest.
to a church may be deductible as a charitable contribution, and
this is
itemizers might be able
messy.
to claim the charitable deduction subject to
But
limitation.
they are not going to be able to get the same kind of double
is messy.
dipping that
No, ma'am. No.
Okay. So my parishioners, the parishioners that tied with me at my home church of the historic Brown Chapel AME Church gets a less generous tax benefit than those that give to this scholarship fund. Is that right?
As you've posited the situation, yes, ma'am.
So what makes me concerned about this is that House Republicans have set aside up to $5 billion a year to go to scholarships for private and religious schools. This is an unprecedented effort to use public money for private schools. The program would be funded by donors who can contribute money or stock, and the students who receive it can have parents that make as much money as Elon Musk, right?
There is no income limitation on the
That's right.
on the donor.
What makes me particularly concerned about this is because in the Deep South, where I represent, Alabama, many of those private schools are segregated schools that are all white. And we would be giving a public benefit to private schools that promote segregation.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. I now recognize Ms. Moore
Exactly.
for 5 minutes.
Thank you
This
so
is
much,
really
Mr.
good.
Chairman.
I know this
Mr.
is really
Bartold,
tedious,
I'm
but
going to
it's
ask you a lot of
very
questions that I
important,
don't want
I
all my
guess.
time
Well,
consumed.
I guess for me,
So
in
just
terms of trying
follow
to
me and
understand
please be
it.
patient. I want to ask you questions about Code Section 199A. This is a section that my colleagues, we've talked about helping families and workers. This one is the one that my colleagues like to refer to as a small business deduction. First of all, how much did this bill cost will it cost to extend this Code Section 199A? And I realize you don't have the 23%, and if you got only 20% numbers, that's acceptable. How much will it cost, the loss to the Treasury?
Ms. Moore, as we report in JCX 22-25, are the permanent extension plus the expansions of Code Section 199A, we've estimated at a cost of approximately $818 billion over the budget period.
Okay. $818 billion is the cost to help these small businesses. Fine. Can you please tell me how, you have data for 2022, I understand. Can you tell me how, what was the total amount of the deductions claimed for Section 199A?
A little bit over $216 billion
Okay.
in tax year 2022.
Thank you. $216 billion in deductions, $818 billion in loss in revenues. That's a lot of money. But what we will do to help small businesses, we ought to do. Okay, now, I like to talk a lot about helping only the 1%. And the 1% makes maybe about $650,000 a year. Is that right, Mr. Bartold?
In reported adjusted gross incomes, that's about right, Ms. Moore.
Okay, so the top 1% of taxpayers by adjusted gross income claimed what percentage of these 199A deductions? The top 1%. How much did they get out of the whole package?
About 50%.
50%. The top 1% got 50%. And these are small business benefits. Wow.
What?
Half of it. So, for the sake of illustration, I want to take a real small business. Say a business that has $200,000 of AGI. What is the average amount of a 199A deduction that kind of business could claim?
Well, just to clarify, Ms. Moore, AGI applies to the
Oh my
taxpayer.
gosh.
And so it can be
Small businesses are
income
defined
from
as under
multiple
500 employees.
sources.
This is all qualified business
If
income.
If it's all qualified business income, $200,000 under present law, the 20% deduction, that would be a deduction of about $40,000.
Okay, but
if your question was taxpayers with AGIs of around $200,000 with qualifying business income being
that
less
was my
than
question, Mr. Bartold.
Well, then
Okay, 'cause
the
I'm
average
running out of
deduction is
time.
about, I'm sorry, is about $6,500.
That's right. It's about $6,000. So I'm going to go on. I don't want to burn all my time up. If you had a $10 million, there were 10 people, taxpayers claiming the 199A deduction had $10 million, and they got how much on average?
Adjusted gross income, 10 million, not all of which is qualified business income. So on average, those sort of taxpayers claiming about $500,000 in deduction.
All right, they got $500,000 in deduction. I'm going to skip some because it's taking a long time. So there are taxpayers in my state, the E-lines, who made over $100 million that claimed deductions under 199A. And so can you tell me how much that they received as a deduction?
100.
Yeah, $100 million of these small businesses.
Well, in 2022, there's a neighborhood of 800 taxpayers with adjusted incomes exceeding $100 million who claimed a deduction under Code Section 199A, and the average deduction was around $11 million.
And did they, and I'm going to tell you,
17
million of these businesses, 84% of these businesses had 0 employees. So they didn't create jobs. Thank you so much for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Bartow.
I now recognize Mr.
Didn't you have to have one employee?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Mr.
Like
Bartold,
yourself?
the goal of my question is to elucidate how current law operates and how this legislation proposes to change current law. Current statute prohibits the President and the Secretary of Treasury from initiating an IRS investigation on any specific taxpayer, as outlined in 26 U.S. Code 7217, which states, and I quote, "It shall be unlawful for any applicable person, that is, the President, Vice President, any employee of the Executive Office of the President, the Secretary of the Treasury, and other members of the Cabinet, to request, directly or indirectly, any officer or employee of the IRS to conduct or terminate an audit or other investigation of any particular taxpayer with respect to the tax liability of such preparer." Mr. Bartold, can you confirm that it would be illegal under current law for the President or the Secretary of the Treasury to initiate an IRS investigation on an organization's nonprofit status?
That's correct, Mr. Barr.
Thank you, sir. Under current law and IRS practice, if a taxpayer has demonstrated it is operating outside the requirements of his tax-exempt status, and there's an investigation by non-political IRS civil servants and due process for the organization involved. Isn't that correct?
Yes, Mr. Barr. There are situations where an investigation could involve chief counsel at the IRS, and the chief counsel is a political appointment.
Great, thank you. But I want to turn to the legislation. In Section 112209, it claims to combat tax-exempt organizations that provide material support for terrorism. Considering the Trump administration's clear weaponization of government, including the IRS, to pursue their political enemies, I want to make sure that I understand how this proposal would operate if it became law. The language in this section states, quote, "The term terrorist supporting organization means any organization which is designated by the Secretary as having provided material support to a terrorist organization." So the Secretary must notify the offending organization of its forthcoming designation and the name of the terrorist organization being provided material support, quote, "as determined by the Secretary." Mr. Bartold, does this language require that the offending organization be convicted in a court of law for providing material support to an organization before losing its tax-exempt status?
No, Mr. Barr, the language does not require a conviction for providing material support.
Thanks. So to be clear, the only requirement is that the Secretary determines an offense has taken place, and that the Secretary can do so on his own authority and judgment without any judicial determination at all, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Barr. The proposal does not require judicial determination.
Thank you. And this legislation states that the Secretary must provide, quote, "a description of such material support or resources except to the extent that the Secretary determines that disclosure of such description would be inconsistent." Could the Secretary assert that documentation of an offense is classified or, quote unquote, law enforcement sensitive, and therefore provide no substantive description, let alone evidence, to an organization on their alleged offense? In other words, if this legislation were law, are there scenarios where a target organization could have no opportunity to review the evidence against them in order to meaningfully respond to the allegations?
Well, the proposal contemplates and allows the Secretary to withhold a description of the nature of the material support provided by the organization if the Secretary is determined doing so is inconsistent with national security. But the Secretary must note that he's made such a determination in a notice to the organization.
Oh, big
And
deal.
so then the organization may seek a judicial review of that determination.
Oh, really?
Thank you. So in summary,
With all the federal
this
judges that'll be
legislation will allow
left
the
by then?
Secretary on his sole authority to determine a tax-exempt organization has provided material support to a terrorist organization without any prior judicial review, and he could also do so without providing even a description of the
I know
alleged
they have
offense
courts
to the
where you
accused
can have
organization.
like,
The
what,
Constitution requires the
in-camera or
executive branch to
whatever?
faithfully execute the law, but we've seen what contempt this president, this administration has for due process. There are current cases in litigation where federal officials are being threatened with criminal contempt and operating in
That's
bad
crazy.
faith.
This is crazy.
The administration's track record is taken to heart. This proposal will allow the Treasury Department to rescind the tax-exempt status for law-abiding organizations without due process, without judicial determination of guilt, and without providing evidence for the alleged offense. Mr. Barthold, if this legislation were passed into law,
Mr.
any
Barthold,
administration,
fuck
the
that
Trump
shit.
administration, any future ones,
Say it with
would be
me.
allowed to target its political enemies through unsubstantiated
Let's
claims
kiss.
of
No.
supporting terrorism without
I
providing
think the
evidence
two
to
of them
revoke
would
their
make a really
tax-exempt
cute couple. I'm just
status.
saying.
If a group, a social welfare organization, a civil rights group, a religious institution, advocacy coalitions disagrees with the administration, they risk their tax-exempt
There you go.
status.
Why not?
Gentleman's
Why?
time has expired.
Good for the goose is
point
good
is
for the
made. Thank
gander,
you. I yield back.
motherfucker.
And I'll recognize Mr. Swazi for 5 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Barthold, I have some technical questions for you, but first
I
I want
love
to point
Swazi.
out a op-ed piece from Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, the chairman's home state, when he said, I think it was just yesterday, Republicans are having an identity crisis. The nub of the conflict, will Republicans be a majority party of working people or a
using
permanent
his
minority
words.
speaking
Whoop,
only for
whoop.
the C-suite? Mr. Trump has proposed working-class tax cuts and protection for working-class social insurance, such as Medicaid. But now a noisy contingent of corporatist Republicans, call it the party's Wall Street wing, is urging Congress to ignore all that and get back to the good old-time religion, corporate giveaways, preferences for capital, and deep cuts to social insurance. This wing of the party wants Republicans
Tom Cotton,
to build
you
our
are-
big,
Tom-
beautiful bill around
Tom
slashing
Hawley,
health
Josh
insurance for
Cotton.
the working poor.
You're
My
out of the
argument is
potluck.
it's both morally wrong
Whoop,
and
whoop.
politically suicidal. So with that in mind, Mr.
Holy,
Barthold,
holy.
the president has said that we have massive deficits.
Somebody
They're going
wants
to
to
be
be a
reduced
real
to
boy.
practically nothing in Asheville, North Carolina. In Politico reported that the president committed to publicly support Senate Republicans in their efforts to massively reduce the deficit. Chairman Smith said, if we don't reduce the deficit, we will spend more in the debt than we do on national defense.
Yeah,
Jody
well, hold
Arrington,
my
the
beer,
chairman of
Mar-a-Lago
Defense,
Accord.
said this trajectory of the deficit is unsustainable and is arguably the biggest threat failing our nation. And he said we have to reverse the curse. Lloyd Smucker, a good friend, said the reconciliation bill must not add to the deficit. And there are other quotes from Schweikert and Feenstra and Murphy and Moore and Aronson and Vern Buchanan and Adrian Smith and Mike Kelly says it's a threat to our national security. Darren LaHood, even Estes, a good friend, another good friend, said we have to have a balanced budget amendment. My question to you regarding the deficit, does the bill before us and this committee right now increase the deficit?
The legislation before you, as we've reported in JCX 22-25R, the tax provisions would increase the deficit.
Okay, does the
budget.
president authorize,
you're
the
not gonna
president
make it to the
authorize as part of this
16th
bill before this committee
party. Okay,
to
you're not going
borrow
to make your 16th
$4
anniversary,
trillion?
bitch. You're done. You're toast.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay. Regarding salt, the president said when coming to Nassau County during the campaign, he says, I will turn it around. I will get salt back. I will work with the Democratic governor and mayor and make sure the funding is there to bring New York State back to levels it has never seen in 50 years. Mr. Barthold, does this bill before us restore the entire state and local tax deduction?
No, it does not, Mr. Swazi.
Okay, the president has said that we are the party of the working class, and Chairman Smith has said we're the party of the working class, and other people have said they're the party of the working class.
It was a good run, Barthold,
Punchbowl
but you're
reported,
fucked.
Financial Times reported
That's
on
right.
May 9th of this year, Trump
That's
and
right.
Johnson
Don't go
agreed to
near
a new
windows.
tax
That's
bracket
my
for earners
advice.
making more than $2.5 million.
You
President
didn't pay
Trump on
attention to
Truth
the
Social
other
said
that chick
he will
that got
graciously
fired?
accept a tax
You didn't pay
increase
attention to that?
in order to help lower and middle class families. I'm okay if they do it. Is there an increase in the tax rate for the wealthiest people in the United States of America?
The legislation before you extends permanently the top bracket at 37%.
So it does not restore it to what it was before,
Oh,
to 39.6.
that doesn't go to the
That is correct,
39.6.
Mr. Suozzi.
So this is a tax decrease for the wealthiest Americans in our country, or it's a continuation of the previous tax decrease for the wealthiest Americans. Is that correct?
That's subject to different member interpretation, Mr. Suozzi.
Okay, on tips. The president has said, your tips will be 100% yours. Does this tax bill continue the payroll tax on people's tips?
Yes, it does, Mr.
Overtime. The president said your overtime will be tax-free. Does this bill continue the payroll tax on overtime?
It does not exempt overtime from the payroll tax.
The
Sir.
president has said he's going to remove taxes on Social Security. Does this bill remove taxes on Social Security benefits?
The legislation provides an increased
deduction
exemption amount.
But does it remove taxes on Social Security benefits as promised by the president?
Does not change Social.
The president and the Republicans have made a very big deal about the
Suozzi
importance
so
of tariffs. Tariffs are essential, they say, in order for us to balance the budget, to do things to help bring money into the federal government so we don't have to cut as many things. We need to bring money in from tariffs. Does the Ways and Means Committee have the sole jurisdiction of the committees in Congress on tariffs?
I believe that is so, sir.
Is there anything in this bill whatsoever, this massive 400-page bill, this big, beautiful bill, this important bill that's comprehensively looking at the finances of the United States of America, does it have a single thing in it about setting tariff policy in America?
I'll ask my colleague from the Trade Subcommittee.
The answer to that question is yes.
What does it have?
The provision I walked through,
Gentleman's time has expired.
the provision I walked through, which eliminates our de minimis law, and tariffs would be applied to any packages that currently receive de minimis treatment, under which you do not pay a tariff.
Okay, I support the de minimis elimination, especially if we do it sooner instead of waiting until 2027. But all the other things we've been talking about tariffs have not been discussed in this bill.
Expired.
Thank you.
I now recognize
Thank you.
Ms. Plaskett for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your patience in dealing with us and answering these questions. We know that this information was given to you at a very short time. I listened to my colleagues just recently discuss the amount of money that's given to the largest bracket. You said that that was a reduction in how much, Mr. Bartold, for the top bracket?
Absent this legislation, the top bracket would revert to a rate of 39.6. This legislation extends the 37% bracket that was established in 2017.
It extends the 37 bracket. And then what is the next bracket of individuals in the tax code?
35 is next down.
35. And who's within that group? What income bracket is that?
I'll have to check the break points. I'm afraid I don't know them off the top of my head.
You don't know those
I'll
by
get that
heart.
for you.
I know that we just received the chairman's amendment in the nature of substitute the budget reconciliation, legislative recommendations related to tax. And this chart shows us in calendar year 2027 income categories and change in federal taxes in those categories. I was hoping, I'm not a math person. I actually went to Georgetown Foreign Service School because they told me there was no math requirement. I even applied early to get in, and then I got bamboozled when I found out that there was a 2-year of econ. So I'm gonna need you to help me with the math here. It says here that for those individuals in the income category of 80 to 100,000, right? What is the change to them in this new bill? What are they gonna be receiving?
You want to know the provisions that affect them, Ms.
Yes.
Plaskett? Okay. Well, remember, absent this legislation, tax brackets would generally increase the standard deduction.
Okay, I'm just going to stop him because single filers for 35% federal income tax bracket applies to single 243,000 to 609,000. Heads of households 243 to 609. Yeah, so about that range. Sorry.
Would decrease, the child tax credit would decrease, and so many taxpayers in that bracket, in that income group, would have a change in tax rates. They would have a decrease in their standard deduction. They would have a decrease in child tax credit if their household had children. On the other hand, they would some might be more likely to itemize, could claim.
Individuals making 80 to 100,000 are going to be itemizing, sir?
Yes, some individuals in 80
That's a
to
small
100.
percentage.
It is a smaller percentage. The itemization under prior law and under current law is typically in the upper half of the income.
So let's talk about what the percentage those individuals are going to be getting. People within the Virgin Islands, I mean, our median income and the amount of income that people in the Virgin Islands going to get is going to put them in either the $60,000 to $80,000 range or the $80,000 to $100,000 range, and that's for a household income doing pretty well in the Virgin Islands. That compared to individuals in the $500 to the $1,000 range. What is the difference between those two and what this bill is going to be giving them?
Right. Well, as you can see in the very first column to the left of the income categories, it reports the change in federal taxes under the legislation. And on the first page of JCX 23-25, it shows for the income category of 80,000 to 100,000 that the aggregate reduction in federal taxes will be approximately $31.3 billion. If you compare that to the 500,000 to 1 million category, the aggregate reduction is $73.1 billion.
That's overall. That's overall what we're going to get.
That's in aggregate.
But that's not going to tell us what the average individual is going to get,
Well,
is it?
some of the average effect you can see in the last two columns where it reports the average tax rate. And so for your category of 80,000 to 100,000, you can see that under present law, the average tax rate that those taxpayers pay is a little bit over 15%. Under the proposed legislation, it would fall to 13.5%. So
Okay.
a reduction in taxes. Now, by comparison, since you wanted to compare, the reduction in average tax rate for the $500,000 to the million category is from close to 30% to closer to 36%.
How about this percent? How about this? This is what I've heard. The top 1%, 0.1%, stands to gain about $278,000 per year. That's $762 per day. While the average family is going to get $1,000 a year,
Gentlewoman's time has
that's
expired.
about $2 a day. Is that correct, sir?
Gentlewoman's time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Murphy.
Can he answer the question that was a yes or a no?
I'll allow a yes or no answer.
I can't verify the mathematics, Ms. Plaskett. I'm not doubting it, but I just can't verify it.
Mr. Murphy is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification. I think it's important just that we have frames of reference with who pays the taxes in this country. Mr. Broadhall, do you know what percentage the 1%, top 1% of earners in this country pay in taxes?
Excuse me. The top 1%. If you look on page 5 of JCX 23, we have tried to provide income quantiles, and you'll see that we report the 99th to 99.9th percentile, and then the highest 1/10 of 1%. And in about the middle column, you can see that under present law, that those, so that would be the top 1% of taxpayers would pay 13.6% plus 11.9%, which is 25.5% of all federal taxes.
All right, I was looking at something here on this illustrious thing called Google that said it was 40.
Don't believe everything you say.
40% of federal taxes. So, all right, so you're saying how much? 20?
God.
I said 25.5%.
Okay. And the top 10%
Oh.
said accounts for 72% of all federal income
My
taxes paid in 2022.
God.
Again, I'd prefer if you'd look at my page 5, and then you'd be summing the last 4 rows of that middle column.
And what is can you help me with the bottom 50%?
Oh my
How much they
God.
pay in taxes?
Okay, well, I have
Can
to.
you look at the
take-
fucking thing?
I'm looking at Google again, and it says.
Well,
Oh my
again,
God.
I don't want to believe Google.
This
Not
is so
knowing- well,
embarrassing.
not knowing what Google's measuring. What we're trying to measure here is the effect of payroll taxes, income taxes, federal excise taxes, and the corporate tax.
Okay.
One tax
All right.
that is not federal tax that's left out is the estate and gift tax.
Holy
All right,
shit
fair enough.
balls.
Are there provisions in this bill where those in the higher income bracket have fewer deductions?
Yes, as noted in the walkthrough, the extension of the 2017 legislation includes extension of a number of limitations on itemized deductions, state and local income tax, mortgage interest. It creates, in addition, a new limitation on the benefit of those who itemize, limiting the value of the benefit to 35%.
So the top
So
bracket
what?
will
It's
actually
also
end up
limited to
paying more in
others.
taxes, even
They will
though the
have
rate
those
hasn't
limitations. Some taxpayers will
Dude.
pay more.
Dude.
Some will pay less.
You're never going to be one of them,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay,
Yield back.
Murphy? You're never
back,
going
and
to
I
be one of
recognize
them,
Mr. Evans with a
okay?
technical question for 5
They're
minutes.
just humoring you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield to Mr. Doggett.
Thank you very much. You know, at the beginning of this hearing, the chairman told us that his priority was the working class. And it sounds a lot like what President Trump has said in all of his broken promises, that he's concerned with working people. And now that we have, which we didn't have earlier, these green sheets, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Barthold, about how much good they've done for the working class. First of all, given the last questions that you just answered, there's not any law of physics or law of tax law of any kind that says if you really want to help the working people of this country, you've got to give big tax breaks to the people at the top. There's no such law, is there? There's no reason we can't focus this tax relief on the people that are out there working hard for a living, not the Elon Musk of the world.
I'm sorry, Mr. Doggett.
Well, let me shorten it just a little bit. There's not any requirement under the tax laws that you have worked on as the chief of the Joint Committee on Taxation that say if we want to help working people, if, as the chairman told us, his priority is the working class, that the only way we can do it is to give huge tax cuts to Elon Musk and the billionaire class.
As we discussed earlier, Mr. Doggett, the members can
Yes, sir.
choose to target tax benefits.
Well, let's-
Its ways they seem.
We can target it if we want to, but we can also
Yeah,
target it to
the website, the
limousine
JCT
lobbyists
website
and to
that
the-
I just
the power
dropped the thing
brokers
he's
in our country
referencing.
who already
If you
have
go
so
to their
many
main website and
loopholes
go
and
to latest
advantages in our tax
publications,
code. Let's
I
see
think
how
that's where
well,
they're
based
uploading
on
the green
information you
sheets. I
gave
don't
us
know if I
just
see
now
the
that we did
exact.
not have earlier, how well
it's on that
this
website.
Republican majority has done in prioritizing the working class. If I understand your numbers, it looks to me like it's about $263 per taxpayer for those who
Who's
earn
Arnold
less
Laffer,
than
or Arthur
$50,000.
Laffer?
Is that about right? And this is in year 2027.
Mr. Doggett, you're ahead of me in that
Well,
you've been able to do
back
the
up.
division.
You've got, don't you, first of all, in year 2027, those who earn over $1 million a year, they're going to get about $96 billion in tax cuts, aren't they?
Above $1 million, the change under the proposal is about 100.
Yeah, there is a napkin doodle on
100
there.
billion,
So
yes,
funny.
sir.
They'll get
Funny you
$100
say-
billion. And
The
all of
laughing
those
curve.
below $50,000.
Okay,
if you
well,
add
that
them up,
doesn't
I
help,
think it
but
comes
that's
up to
fine.
about
I'm gonna look it
19,
up.
doesn't it?
Clearly, he may not deserve it, right? Oh, he's a napkin doodler. Oh.
Difference
I don't
Oh.
want to hold you up on.
5.1, 4.
Well,
Basically,
take your word for
by
it.
my calculations, we're talking about something like 310 times the average tax cut for taxpayers under 50,000 as for those over $1 million. Does that sound in the range of about what it is?
Again, to do these calculations, we provided the number of returns on page 15, and so you can compute the average
Yes, sir.
by category. I don't want to overstate or understate a result here and confuse
I appreciate your objectivity. I'm using your numbers, and it looks to me like we are providing, under the Republican bill, the average tax cut for a taxpayer who's making more than $1 million a year. Somebody who's pretty comfortable in our society, more than $1 million in a single year. They get 310 times the average tax cut for taxpayers making less than $50,000 a year. I don't call that prioritizing the working class, wherever you came from, prioritizing the people that are out there providing the services that make America go. I call it more trickle-down economics, that a little will come dribbling down to those who are working hard out there, from Elon Musk and all the people that were on the front row behind the president in his inauguration. It's pretty clear where the focus is, where the whole purpose of this tax proposal is. It's not to help working America. It's to take from those who are working their health care, their future, and use those proceeds and $1 trillion and trillions of dollars of debt to provide more benefits to the billionaire class, and it's wrong and it should be rejected. And thank you for your answers and for this data.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Hearn for 5 minutes.
I won't need 5 minutes. The gentleman from Texas talks about the tax code only, the income tax and the change. Mr. Bartold, how much is the child tax credit scored at?
The extension of the child tax credit.
Just roughly, you don't have to get, I don't care about pennies.
Well, I wasn't pennies. I was trying to look for the specific line on the table. Over the 10-year period, almost $800 billion.
So is that going to the billionaires?
No, they're...
Okay, that's all I need to say. What about the no tax on tips? How much does that score?
The no tax on tips is almost $40 billion.
And no tax on overtime?
Overtime, $124 billion.
Either one of those going to the billionaires? I'm using the billionaires because that's what my colleague from Texas pointed to.
Well, you're
Either
at
one
about
of those
$1
going
trillion.
to the billionaires?
Well, there's no income restriction on tips, but I don't know that there's a lot of tips among billionaires.
Well,
So the
wait.
reality is, Mr.
Hold on
Bartold,
to your
is
butts,
that while
because
we're
there's gonna
talking
be-
specifically about the tax rate here staying permanent,
This is
all
how
these
we
other
got here.
provisions that
All
we put
this
in there
nonsense.
that President Trump has talked about taking, that they're wanting to demagogue, that these other ones do affect a lot of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to the folks that are making on the lower end of income scales that they don't want to allude to. So I just want to point that out for the record, Mr. Bartold. Thank you for all your work.
Brother.
Thank you. Are there others? Okay, I'll ask my question now and then proceed forward from there with other members wishing to ask a technical question. Mr.
No,
Sneed,
he's
I wanted to talk a
Joint
little bit
Committee
about
on Taxation.
the de minimis provision.
The
And
JCT.
do you see a risk that perhaps this provision could possibly or not to conflict with the Trump administration's current actions on de minimis?
Thank you for that question. I think as constructed, I don't see significant risk of that, but I think that is important context. We have that President Trump has acted already in this area to eliminate the de minimis exemption for shipments from China. That took effect May 2nd, which is the week before last. And so that has already taken effect as an emergency action under IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So this provision in today's legislative recommendation is not conflicting with that, is completely ending the privilege, not on an emergency basis, on a permanent basis.
Oh,
for shipments
so
from
that means all your
countries.
low-cost shipments?
And so
are going to
don't see
be
immediate
tariffed,
conflict with that. I think
rightly?
if there were sort of nearer term
Am I
action
right?
directly relevant to China, there might be more questions and challenges as far as how these two things fit together. One piece of the context I point to is there is some litigation
Who's that gonna
currently
hurt?
about IEEPA and its connection to tariffs. There was an argument in the Court of International Trade just today, and this approach takes an approach of creating long-term certainty while providing room for the president to act. He's already acted on China, has indicated an intent to act even sooner with other countries, but this approach is ensuring that de minimis does go away for commercial shipments from all countries within the next 2 years.
And just to clarify, though, for the sake of information, a traveler coming back into the U.S. with some purchases of souvenirs, that limit would be, as proposed, how much?
So that would be completely unchanged. That's a $200 limit. That's a separate provision in the law, and we're not looking to change that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, what's your
I yield
point?
back and now recognize Mr. Gomez.
So just go, just travel.
Thank you, Mr.
You should
Chairman.
go travel to China and buy
can
the
you
stuff
help
from
me
Temu.
With, explain a little bit
Go to
on
the
this?
Temu store,
I'm just looking
whatever.
at the chart here. And it says that in the calendar year 2027, someone that's making less than $15,000 will see an increase in federal taxes by 18.7%. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Gomez, and that's a consequence of loss of premium tax credits, health care.
Okay, so
I read that today.
And then in calendar
Yes.
year 2020, anybody making less than 15,000 sees an increase of 53.5%. Anybody who's making 15,000 to 30,000 sees an increase by 11.7%. Is that correct?
What calendar year are we in, Mr. Gomez?
2029. It's the next page.
2029. Yes.
And then we see the next page in 2031. Anyone making less than 15,000 sees a, check this out. I thought this was a mistake. I thought I was not reading this correctly. An increase in their taxes of 74.3%. And from 15,000 to 30,000 of 20.6%. Is that correct? Or is that, did you guys make a mistake, or is that like?
No mistake in the numbers, but an important thing to remember is in lower brackets, it's actually hard to measure the denominator because there are some taxpayers that are getting refundable tax credits, for example, and so there's some with negative tax rates, and so you're adding up some with negative tax rates and positive tax rates, so it's like dividing a modest change over by zero.
Well, here's the thing. This is what your own tax brackets suggest. And one of the things that we have my Republican colleagues over here saying, hey, we're not doing tax on tips, which we know is actually pretty limited. Oh, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z, but we're screwing over people who are making less than $30,000 a year. And what I actually find offensive is because my parents never made more than $38,000 a year in their entire lifetime after working 4 to 6 jobs a week to make ends meet, right? And then we have Donald Trump and his chaotic, reckless tariff policy that is creating so much uncertainty that it's driving up the cost of living in this country. At first, it was $4,900 a year. Then it became $3,800 a year. Either way, the people at the lower income brackets are getting screwed over by a Republican majority that doesn't give a damn about them. Then on top of that, we know this, the people that are under $30,000 a year are most likely to be on Medicaid, most likely to live in rural areas, more likely to be in urban areas that are the working poor. But then they're bragging about, you know what? The top income brackets make the most money, so we're going to give them the highest amount of refunds. That's insane. And they have no shame about it. You have no shame when it comes to hurting working men and women in this country. You know, I'm somebody that was supposed to not go to college. I ended up working at Subway and Target. I would make $700 a week working not 9 to 5, but 5 in the afternoon to 9 the next day. I had zero health care. And to me, you would tell somebody in my place, you know what? We're helping you out. just giving you a little bit. But the billionaires are the ones that make the most money and deserve the most help. That's your logic. But I like to quote one billionaire when it comes to Warren Buffett that says that a lot of people shouldn't be punished because it wasn't determined on what they did. It was the happenstance of their birth. But you all want to like tout a tax plan that increases taxes on people making under $30,000 a year, the folks that are struggling, and then cutting their Medicaid on top of that, but yet you want people to have more babies. That's the most insulting thing I've ever heard in my life. With that, I yield back.
Are there additional members with technical questions? Seeing none, we'll move to strike the last word. Are there any members that wish to strike the last word?
I never understand that.
Mr. Doggett is recognized to strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trump's one big, beautiful bill is nothing but an ugly lie, built on a mountain of lies, preserved today through a process that is a lie in blatant violation of the rules of this House of Representatives. Republicans can talk fiscal responsibility all day long, and they usually do at their campaign rallies, but they are practicing incredible fiscal irresponsibility by adding trillions of dollars to our national debt and endangering the future of what Elon Musk condemns as a Ponzi scheme, but what most Americans, generations of Americans, recognize as Social Security and a respectable retirement. It is a lie first to claim that this bill shows fiscal responsibility, because the Republicans are following their cult leader, the self-described king of debt, when it comes to more and more tax breaks for those at the very top. Too much is never enough, even when it means total fiscal responsibility. Republicans have a one-size-fits-all solution to loopholes that allow some of the most profitable corporations in the world to pay so little on their taxes. Their solution, widen the loopholes, and that's what this bill does. Let them avoid even more of their fair share of paying for our national security and other vital services. Second, it is a lie that this bill is focused on tax relief for the middle class, and we have just seen that. 310 times more relief for those who earn over $1 million a year than for those that earn $50,000 or less. This entire bill could be about half its total size if we were not providing benefits to those at the top, the billionaire class that they hope will eventually come down to the rest of our society, but which it never has. And guess who does this Republican tax bill treat better? Someone who trims hedges for a living, or someone who's a hedge fund manager? Well, if you guessed the hedge fund manager, it wasn't very difficult, but under this bill, most of these Wall Street titans can put most of their income through carried interest and pay a maximum rate of 20%. Multinational corporations are paying an average of about 7.8% tax rate, far below the tax rate for a nurse or a teacher. Whatever incentive or reward these Republicans think hedge fund managers and major corporations need to do their job, shouldn't that tax incentive apply to those who nurse the sick, who educate our children, and those who keep us safe?
We don't have any more public education.
I think the answer is quite clear.
Sorry.
And the ideological attacks on clean energy will leave families paying the bill. A coalition of 23 retired four-star generals and admirals just this week advised the committee that it was vital to both our economic security and national security to preserve the incentives that we enacted in a Democratic Congress, which they proposed to wipe out. And third, I would say this bill is based on a lie that this bill protects our health care and access to a family physician. Republicans are turning safety net programs into more hole than net, gaping holes that will deny almost 14 million vulnerable Americans access to a family physician.
After more than 60 repeated failures by Republicans to repeal the Affordable Care Act, they're at it again. They're sabotaging it. They're trying to deny the access that our countrymen need to get health care. 4 million alone will lose coverage because of their failure to extend the Affordable Care Act enhanced incentives. The beauty of this bill may be in the eye of the billionaire class, but to the rest of us, it is just another dangerous swing, using the wrecking ball that Donald Trump keeps using to wreck our economy and our democracy. And if all the lies were not enough, if our tax code did not already look like a block of Swiss cheese, Republicans are creating even more loopholes to benefit every special interest, from tanning studios to tobacco companies, even as they shut down the Department of Education and slash billions from pre-K to 12 funding. They're pushing a $20 billion tax credit over 4 years, effectively a federal voucher plan to encourage parents all over this country to remove their children from our valued public schools.
Yep.
All of it is a package of lies that must be rejected. I yield back.
Woo, woo, woo.
Mr. Thompson is recognized to strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I've
are
got
you
to
a
hand it to you,
Republican?
Mr. Chairman. Your bill touches just about everyone. Gives incredible amount of big dollars to people who need it the least. It takes
right.
health care
Okay.
away from 13 million.
I'm sorry. I'm going to cut off Mr. Thompson because we've been going on for 3 hours and 15 minutes about. Elon Musk chatbot IDs him as Trump seriously overweight pal taking the fat shot. Oh my God, are you kidding? He's taking, oh my God. So Elon is on Ozempic? Is that what the fat shot is? Is it Ozempic? Or is that a pill? RFK's brainworm and E. coli still tan their house. Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's probably how that tanning bed's excise tax exclusion got in there. That's probably how that happened. Woo! Whoa, woo, woo. What a day. What a day. Oh, I'm going to bake too. I think I've earned it. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Here we go. Max says Musk has publicly admitted to using weight loss drugs like Ozempic and fits the description of a well-known, brilliant businessman. Now that's funny. That's funny. Ozempic and Wegovy are both shots. Yeah, I just didn't recall if it was a shot or a pill, but I suppose it's a shot. Which, just talk to your doctor. Yeah, thank you guys for spending so much time here today. I really appreciate it. Not to be outdone, we do have a documentary tonight. It's The Garden, which is, let's go ahead and take all this shit off the screen, about the community garden that sprung up after the 1992 riots in South Central Los Angeles. Thank you to the lounger who suggested it. My fucking brain is like never working for those important details, but there was someone who actually was able to suggest it. Oh man, take that off too. Oh, ugh. Only fireplace. Come on now, only fireplace. And in my opinion, also fits highly neurotic. Oh, that he said neurotic. That's right. Oh my God. The shocking bit of that aside was that he said he takes the fat shot. I said it's not working. I know. Here's the thing. Like, I don't know. This is all so weird. Because the RFK Jr. did the same thing to the governor of West Virginia when he went there and said, no more soda for poor people or what, like he was doing a real shtick when he was there. And so he was going to different ones, but he basically fat shamed the governor of West Virginia when he was there. We played it on the lounge. Yeah, welcome to the resistance chatbot. Oh my God. Oh, you did? Oh, cool. Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. Thank you. So Karen, hat tip to Karen for tonight's documentary, for Documentary Tuesdays on the Discord. That happens in a few hours at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, everything inside, outside. I'll put up the links on all my socials. And I hope the rest of your day is as calm and restorative as it can be. Yeah, it's not working. Saw that. It did not include the same secondhand report of cruel bonbon. Bonbon. I love that word, bonbon. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you on the Discord.